Ladies and gentlemen, the Wally Report.
So listen, everybody, we are back with probably the biggest Wally Report episode in history. Of course, it's your marvelous host, Ari Weiss, and we have Tate Donovan here today. I'm just so excited. How you doing today, Tate?
I'm stoked. I'm stoked to finally make the Wally Report. You know what I mean? Like, there are things that in an actor's career that they have markers. And this is one of them for me.
Yeah, I mean it's the hottest as we talk about. It's the hottest podcast in the world. I'm sure you had Smartless calling, you had Fly on the Wall calling, you had to cancel. It's Wally Report. Now, people are probably wondering where Christopher is. He's not with us today, sadly, which we'll get into why it would have been so perfect as you being a guest, because you do care about New York architecture from the 70s. So it would have been so good.
Yeah, I feel as though I kind of relate to Christopher quite a bit. Every time he speaks on the podcast, I'm like, yeah, man, yeah, that's true. Ari, you should think
you're
about
into
that.
you're into what he's talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah. So
Right?
I'm like the substitute teacher right now for him.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll do your fantastic interview, which we're going to get into in a few minutes, and then you're also the kind of the sub for the Christopher parts today, if
Yeah,
you
there we
will,
go. Yeah,
right?
except for I'm not as well versed in television lore as Christopher, but I'll do my
Right.
best. I'll do my best.
And just so you know, the fans of Christopher, are the Divines. Just because his last name's Divine, so there's a big
Mhm.
Divine following. Of course, there's more Wally, follow, but he's doing pretty good in the ranks. So let's start this off just like we normally do with the hot topic of the month. Okay. I'm going to give you a curveball here because I know we talked about this before. I was going with the Metropolitans. However, they've pissed me off. They've lost two straight. I can't talk about them on the show now. The
Oh
season's
no.
back. The
Uh,
season's back in jeopardy. So
uh,
what's interesting here
mhm.
is I had told you, hey, we're not going to have political topics.
Mhm.
However, I'm going to shift gears and
Uh-oh.
I'm not going to go Tate political, but I'm going to go Wally political here. So here's two quick hot topics from me. Now, as you're doing your thing, going around in the political landscape that you do, right, and you talk about issues and you help, you help push elections through. Okay, what I
Yeah,
really
I help campaigns. Yeah.
there you go. That's the
Mhm.
correct word. What I really need you to get into is the 4-day work week.
Oh
Okay.
yeah,
This
that's
would
coming up, man. That's
change.
coming up. Yeah.
So wait, hold on. So do you know that Bernie put something I think
Yeah.
about 6 months to a year ago, he put some sort of legislature up for I don't know. What do you mean by it's coming up?
Well, I've just heard talk about it in Congress and yeah, they're trying a 4-day work week, and it's been going on in Europe and being really successful in Europe, and yeah, I think it's coming to America. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me tell you why it's so important to me because, and there's a lot of the listeners too. We all work these just miserable 5-day work weeks, right? At least in the early 1900s, the factory laws it came in, and I think that there was a 6-day work week at one point. I had to look this up, and then I think it was, I don't know when it was, but since like the 20s or something like that. People can fact check me, but it got moved to this 5-day work week. Over the last 5 years or so in this corporate grind that I work in, I've just realized that it's just not sustainable. It's not good for our lives. You especially as you get older, it's Friday night and then you breathe and it's Sunday afternoon. There's no time to have any mental break or anything with your family and friends. It's obvious. It's a terrible life that we're all leading. So if you can do anything
Okay.
to get this, and I
Right.
know Bernie put it out there,
Okay.
so
Hmm.
the other thing too, really quickly, I'll give you your time for your hot topic, is also the clock change. This is the other biggest
Yeah, no, I know,
political
yeah.
thing in the
Yeah,
world for me. We were very close. I don't understand why we still do it.
I
The
know.
winter months are depressing. I mean, I need maybe someone who's a real farmer's almanac guy that maybe can counter me. That says, well, if you don't do the clock change, maybe it's really dark in the mornings. I need some sort of scientific counter. Otherwise, it's just ridiculous. So those are my two. So those are the two hottest political things going on.
Yeah.
Put them in your campaigning, please, and then I'll
Well,
turn it
listen.
over to you. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just that there's going to be some big, conventions. The Republican in Milwaukee and the Democratic in Chicago, and there are going to be some crazy things happening at the conventions this summer. I imagine. I'm predicting, and one of
Yes.
them should be, you or other people who believe what you believe is going to the conventions and saying, "Hey, 4-day work week, man. You want to get my vote?" And how about standing up for cutting out daylight savings? Because everyone, nobody knows
Well, it's
why we're
actually
doing it.
sorry. So it's actually continuing daylight
Yes,
savings.
stay on
So
daylight savings. Right, right.
exactly,
Don't put the
exactly.
clocks
Yes.
back or
Right.
don't
That's
put
just
them forward.
ridiculous yeah,
Yeah,
it's ridiculous
yeah,
at this point that we're
yeah,
in California and when it's dark at 4:45.
yeah.
I mean, come on.
Nobody knows like why that is going on. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
why
I
is that
think it
happening?
originally happened because of like a farming, and they needed
Yeah,
the extra hour of sunlight during the winter or something
right.
like that.
Yeah,
And I had to look it up, and I think it was originally changed or because it was always actually daylight savings didn't exist till like 1916. It had something to do with the war. Then they brought it back in the 20s or something like that. And now it should be the way that we all live. So
I think you've got a better shot with daylight savings than you do with the 4-day work week because that is not doesn't seem like a governmental thing to me. It is more like a corporate thing, and it's like workers have to be like, hey, I can't do I can be super productive 4 days, just as productive 4 days out of the week as I am five.
Well, the good thing is that, of course, this podcast is taking off, and pretty soon I won't have to work,
That's true.
obviously.
Yeah,
But then I'll
yeah,
still care
yeah,
about the common man later
yeah,
on when I'm in my
yeah.
castle
Remember
and the
us,
people that I
okay?
used to
Would you?
struggle with and complain
Yeah,
with. So,
right,
um,
right. That
okay,
that'd
so
be
let's
great if
turn
you
it
don't
over to
forget us.
you. What's
Yes.
your hot topic of the month here coming on the
Ooh,
show now?
hot topic.
You were going to
Well,
talk about
I'm a
cycling,
big
no?
fan.
Or,
Well,
sorry.
yeah, I mean, July is just the greatest month for sports. I mean, it is just crazy great for a guy like me. There's the Tour de France, which is just like I can watch it every day, get up at 5 in the morning. Ever since 1999, Lance Armstrong won his first Tour de France. I didn't even know about it. I'd heard about it a couple of times, because my brother Tim was a big cyclist, but I didn't know anything about it. At any rate, I just have been obsessed with that. Then we have the Wimbledon that's going on right now. Fantastic. Then we have the Olympics later on. And right now we got, that's at the end of the month, right? The Olympics, which is the greatest sporting event known to mankind, even better than a Rangers or Mets game or Giants game. Hey, by the way, hot topic for you is that the new season for Hard Knocks are the Giants. Are you psyched
I know.
about that?
Be told I just don't watch Hard Knocks for some weird reason. It
Dude, it
doesn't
is
make
so
any
good.
sense.
I don't even like football, and I love Hard Knocks. You gotta watch Hard Knocks.
All right,
So
I'll
good,
get
so good.
it on the list. But
All
what's
right,
so
put it on
funny
the
to
list.
me about this whole is that you're talking about sports and I'm talking about politics. When has that ever happened in the
That's
history of the
never
family?
happened. Yeah, totally.
I don't think so. Even though they were Wally approved political,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
okay,
Oh, and also,
so
hold on a
yeah,
second. We got Copa
yeah. Sorry,
America,
sorry.
which is amazing. All the soccer teams that are throughout the Americas, and then we have the European Cup, which is going on. So it is like nonstop sports watching at our household right now. We're like, yeah, it's fantastic. Starting at like 5 a.m. and going until midnight.
This is fantastic. I mean, I've never heard better. And I am very, especially Wimbledon, of all the things you just listed, I am a big tennis major guy. Um, this will come up as a theme later, actually
Okay.
talking when we talk about your career here, and I because I have a couple suggestions of things that you might have to do uh, directorial wise.
Okay. Before I
Okay.
retire. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So let's get into this. So just so people know what we're going to do here today was we're going to have this unbelievable exclusive interview. Okay, we're going to talk about a lot of different uh, projects throughout your career and life. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then don't worry, everybody. We will also segue at the end to the top five because I know people are again barging down doors for the Wally top five, and they need both. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's not even a correct a sentence, by the way. I think it's barging through doors, but because I incorrectly said it last time, it seems to be that's the new thing that we've coined for the show. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Okay, let's go all the way back to Jersey, and I'm in the 70s, I'm assuming, right? Or
Okay.
maybe even
Okay.
the late 60s. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's
And I don't think
possible.
I've ever asked you this before, but so where did the actor bug initially come from? Right? Was it movies you were watching? Was it other influences? Was it plays in high school? When did you realize, shit, this is for me? I want to go down this road.
Shit. That's the perfect way to describe it.
Eh,
So, okay, I'm at the Bergen Theater in Tenafly, New Jersey, and I'm
Okay.
going to a movie with my parents. And I
Yeah.
am 4 years old.
Wow. So we
Yeah.
are talking 60s.
Yeah. We're talking 1967 or 68.
Okay.
And I want to sit alone. I spent my whole life wanting to be older. Like I always wanted to be like old. I wanted to seem independent and older than I was. And
Mm,
every trip we took, I always wanted to, be from Italy or where people think. I wanted to be a native of wherever we were going.
mm.
And so the same thing was in this theater. I wanted to sit alone and like like I went to the movie theater by myself. And I look up at the screen, and it's a movie about medieval knights. I don't know the name of it. I can't, all I know is I look up at that screen and I'm like, oh, I really want to do that. I just want to
Wow.
do that. I want to dress up in knights costumes, and I want to ride horses, and I want to fight with swords, and I just want to pretend, and I want to be up on that screen. And it's what's interesting to me as I look back on that moment is that the second thought I had was, oh, it's going to be really hard because I bet everyone in this theater right now wants to do the same. And it was really funny because I remember
Wow.
talking to my dad about it many, many years later. And I was like, oh, and I figured everybody wanted to be, a movie star or whatever. And my dad, who was a doctor, was like, that's not true. Not everybody wants to be a movie star.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, so that was the sort of germ. And, you know, um, I'm trying to think, basically, I just sort of, it was like a quiet little secret that I had my whole life that I wanted to be an actor because my parents were not into it. Um, Nobody in my life was into me, and I would sort of act in any way I could. I would sort of like do school plays or like, I don't know if you remember, but we'd go to Christmas at my grandfather's house, the McAllisters. And
Yeah.
do you remember this at all, where everyone had to
Very
do like a
vaguely.
skit or play an instrument or bake cookies? They had to do something to get their present from grandma and grandpa. So I would always do skits with my cousins, and I would try to seek out like acting jobs wherever I could, kind of thing. And your mom and your dad were heavily influential in me becoming an actor
Yeah, I
because
think you said this before because they're
yeah,
very
yeah, they were
supportive, right?
crazy supportive. They were like, "Oh my God, you're hilarious! I mean, your mom thinks I'm the funniest person on the planet. That's like your
Right.
sister
Right.
thinks you're the funniest person on the planet. Well,
Yeah.
your mom thinks the same about me. So, or at least she makes me feel as though I don't know what she
Right.
says in the privacy of her own home. But at any rate, yeah, it was like that. But so I went to college, and I was undeclared my first year, and then I decided I gotta study acting. I did a play,
Okay,
and
well, hold on, not to cut you
sorry,
off here,
sorry,
but so
sorry,
we
sorry,
jumped too far here. So just
sorry,
really,
sorry.
no, so okay, so you get so I was actually younger than I thought that you were already interested in this, and then you probably were you then from age 10 to 15 watching tons of film and TV and like mesmerized by the whole thing all the time,
Well,
and then were you
television
in
was
plays in high school?
yes, yeah. I did tons of plays in high school,
Okay,
and whenever I could, I was in the play. Whether I had a big part or a small part, I was just like in it. And
okay.
I would go into New York City on myself by myself and go see amazing movies. And I learned a lot about Kurosawa and Coppola and Scorsese and all these amazing filmmakers from the '70s. And um, gee, what was I going to say? Anyway, but I didn't think I had to keep it hidden. I had to keep it quiet because mom and dad did not want
You
an
didn't
actor
have
in the
much
family.
support, right? Okay. So let's talk about USC. Okay. So if grandpa and grandma didn't have you this major support, how did so you went in and got accepted not for theater program yet, you're saying.
Yeah,
So
totally.
you
Yeah.
but was that your sort of secret goal was, hey, I'm going to get there, get into theater and then to film somehow, or would that not was that not really fully thought out yet? Why the California though? Because you wanted to be around that industry, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I got into NYU and USC. Those are the only two colleges I got into. And I was like, you know what? I want to go to USC because that's where the movies are made. And at the time, I wanted to be as far away from my parents as possible. And
How did you spin it though to grandpa being like, I'm going to apply to USC. It's a great program. What was the spin?
well, I didn't say I was going to study theater, and
Right.
it was a good school, and it was the one I got into, and it wasn't crazy expensive at that time. It was
Interesting.
yeah, and well, Tim was out there. Tim and Karen were living out there. My brother, and I guess your parents had moved back, but yeah. So I don't know. He because he's a big Notre Dame fan. It was kind of tough
Right.
for him for his son to go to SC, but yeah, I don't know. They just were like all right, he's going to school. It's a good school, and blah 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 blah. And then I sort of pulled the switcheroo on him and told him that I was going to study theater. And I mean, basically, my dad didn't talk to me for 3 years. I mean, he just sent me letters and articles from the New York Times saying either how you didn't have to study acting to be an actor, and or two, how just impossible it is to be an actor. It's just like
Wow.
you got to give up that hope. I
I didn't
remember
know
I
it was that
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, he had a patient that was Robert Redford's publicist, and he went to her and said, "Listen, can you please talk to my son, and please talk him out of being an actor because this is just ridiculous." And so I went into New York City and had a meeting with her, and I was stoked. I couldn't believe it. I'm like talking to somebody from
Yeah.
Hollywood. I mean, she's Robert
Yeah,
Redford's
yeah.
publicist. Like, she's the most connected person I had ever met. And she said, your dad doesn't want you to become an actor. And I was just like, I didn't care. I just every cell in my body was telling me, oh God, I gotta be an actor. I gotta be a director.
So let's talk about this really quickly. And then, so you're at USC. You then make this change. I knew he was kind of pissed because you know the famous story of the first time I ever heard the word bullshit was coming in the dining room, and you and Grandpa were having an argument. And I
Oh,
came into
really?
yeah, and I was a little kid, and you were like, "That's bullshit, Dad." And maybe I'm paraphrasing, but it was something to do with college and
Yeah,
what
yeah.
was going on, blah blah blah. So you go transfer to the theater. Now you're doing tons of theater program stuff. Do they have big plays like the college plays? Like what are you doing for those next 3 years?
Oh, I was like 24 hours a day. You take dance class, you take voice class, you take a scene study class, you take history and
Yeah.
so, and then you do a play at night. And if you're not acting in the play, you're doing the sets, or you're doing the lighting, or you're making the costumes. It was so much fun. It was fantastic 3 years. And I met some of my closest friends that I'm still super close to and work with to this day. So it was an amazing experience, college and studying theater. And uh you know yeah.
So speaking of that, before we get into the first job and then the first big job, because I want to segue, I'm a big history guy here, so this is
Yes. Hmm.
fantastic. You meet Grant Heslov, who's a
Hmm.
mega producer now, right? What a
Hmm. Yep.
career. Uh so I had it wrong. I thought you guys were college roommates. So you just met him during the program and then you guys became buddies throughout college. Is that sort of the story?
Yeah, that's it. I met him sophomore year, when I declared, my theater major. And yeah, he was like the big man on campus. Everybody loved him. And yeah, I was just like, oh my god, I hope that guy becomes my friend. And
Why?
we
Because he
became
was just hilarious or he had a great
Yeah.
personality. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody loved him and was hugging him and snuggling with him. And he was really funny. And I don't know, he drove a really cool car. He drove this convertible Volkswagen Rabbit. And he was just like a cool customer. He's really smart.
Where was Grant from?
He's from Palos Verdes,
Oh, okay.
California.
Got it. So he's from California.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So college ends. Grandpa's probably still pissed. You get your
Hmm.
degree.
Hmm.
And then I was looking up the timeline here. When do you lock in your first gig? Like, okay, so you start going on auditions, right?
Hmm.
Straight. So you
Hmm.
stay in LA.
Right,
Okay, I'm staying here. I'm doing this. And then you're
right.
obviously doing the whole auditioning thing, right?
Yes. So basically, while I was going to college, I was also auditioning for tiny little roles in movies and television shows. And not coming home in the summers, and just sort of like trying to make a living. And basically, yeah, I just got one line in a movie called No Small Affair with John Cryer, and Demi Moore was in it. And
That's funny.
my line was, "Why don't you take her to the bathroom?" Which is referring to a stripper that was in a bachelor party. I don't, I haven't. Yeah,
Yeah, I see it here. Snow Small Affair 1984.
yeah,
Okay.
there it
We
is.
got
Yeah,
the
yeah,
chronology up.
yes.
Okay, so you hit there. Then it
Mm-hmm.
looks like there's episode on Family Ties, Hill
Yep.
Street Blues,
Mm-hmm.
Magnum PI, which I remember for me was already because I guess I'm 7 at that point. That was big. But is Space Camp the first big thing, or did you already feel getting a couple of these other episodes was more a first big break?
No, Space Camp was at the time like a big budget movie. John Williams was doing the score. And it was like a lead role. So that was sort of like a big break. But it was pretty miserable shooting that that movie. It was pretty tough. And then, of course, we finished it, and then the space shuttle exploded. And then that was the end of that movie, because no adult could ever watch it.
So you actually jumped ahead to my next question. So when I'm
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, it's great. No, it was great. It was perfect. It was organic here. We're aligned. So you know how I worked obviously for George Clooney and Grant were my bosses at one point.
Yeah,
And good night, good
yeah.
luck. That might come up later in our chat. George told me the same story, and I wanted to get it straight from you. He said, "Hey, we were talking about Space Camp. I don't know how it came up because George gabbed with us all the time. He was one of the best bosses ever. We would do
Yeah,
pranks. He
yeah,
would
he's
get us.
awesome.
Grant actually had to finally say, George, let them work because he would start talking sports. Anyway, uh, he brought up how Space Camp was sought after. It was a big deal.
Yeah, it was
Everybody
big.
wanted the role. I think I don't know if
Yeah,
I think he even auditioned for it.
I'm sure.
You get it. He said a lot of
Right.
people were jealous, and then the fucking Challenger thing happened.
Yeah, totally.
So that is true that it then, because of that, no one then wanted to see a space movie because of the sensibilities going on at that time, or what? So
Well,
I
yeah, I
never knew
mean,
that as a kid.
right as the movie was coming out, the Senate was looking into, did NASA have any fault in this thing? So, like, any adult could just not watch that movie. It was just so painful and bringing up traumatic events. I mean, the whole country watched a school teacher explode into, in the sky. It was just
Right.
one of the most horrific sort of events. Were you in school? I mean, did you watch the Challenger? Do you
No,
remember?
I'm 7 years old. I
Well,
don't know
listen,
what's
a
going.
lot of
I
people
get.
remember. I'm sure your
I
did your class. You don't remember the class
no.
watching it on, because a
I
lot of
think in
classes
rural Vermont, there's no, I mean,
didn't
the
have a
one thing
TV.
the only thing I remember from '86 is the Mets winning the World Series.
Oh
That's
yeah, that was
other
big.
than
I
that,
remember that too, man. That was
it's
amazing. I was in New York at the time. It was great.
nice. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
so okay, so that was confirmed. Georgia, I never got to ask you about that.
that is
Kind of a
confirmed.
bummer. What do you mean by miserable work? You didn't like shooting this movie?
Okay, so the set was extraordinary. It was on a thing that moved around in a circle, and then it was put into a giant sort of Ferris wheel, so they could turn the set in all these different directions, so it appear weightless. Trying
Oh,
to appear weightless with gravity is really difficult, and so we shot for 2 weeks and we did not get a single frame in the can. It was like
wow.
it was agony. People were killing themselves. There was so much money being thrown away, and so eventually we just sort of brought the whole set down onto the floor and we just lifted our arms and floated around, and it was kind of, it's pretty hard to say your lines and mean
Mm,
them and connect with another human being while pretending
to
that you're
float.
weightless. Yeah, to
Oh
float.
my god. What's fine, I never noticed that. To me, it was the best special effects that had ever come out at that point, but I'm 7 years
Yeah,
old.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So let's jump ahead a little bit now. Okay. So
You
at
should
least
rewatch
yeah.
that. If you ever smoke marijuana, you should smoke marijuana and rewatch that movie because it's kind of hilariously horrible.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, and yeah, the cast is actually pretty fantastic. And I didn't realize that was John Williams. Did he do the score?
Yeah, he did the score. It's
Wow.
unbelievable. The guys
I
from
just listened to
Star
him
Wars.
on Smartless, and it was a
Yeah,
fantastic episode.
yeah, he's amazing. He's a genius.
Okay, so let's jump all the way now to 1990. Okay. In
Okay.
preparation for this, I rewatched Memphis Belle 2 nights ago.
Oh,
Okay.
sweet,
Yeah,
sweet.
and I gotta say, I kind of came into it thinking I was gonna have the same space camp. Oh, it's like, it's older, it's silly, or whatever. And I gotta say, honestly, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a
Oh,
unbelievable cast. It was a really good time for anybody that's like me that loves late '80s, early '90s stuff. You want a kind of a, I wouldn't say it's a Saving Private Ryan level of a war movie, but
mhm,
it's like
mhm.
it was pretty darn good. We got John Lithgow, which I didn't remember being in, David Strathairn, which is awesome because he's good night and good luck.
Amazing.
I forgot Billy
So good.
Zane was in it from
Yeah. Mhm.
Titanic. And then along with Matthew Modine, Sean Astin, yourself, Eric Stoltz. So any listener of the Wally Report, if you want to feel good early '90s, or you also like war movies, definitely give it a watch. Right? Couple questions I had for you that sort of came. Okay, so where was this? Was it all? Where was it all shot? Is
All
this all
shot
just
in
L.A.?
England. No, no, no,
In
England. The whole thing
England.
was shot, yeah, yeah. We shot all the studio stuff in London, and then we went out to countryside in these great old airfields and shot, yeah, God,
Okay,
Lincoln,
I'm kind of
Lincoln.
surprised. I figured that like it's because there wasn't. I thought that they would just sort of fake that they were in England. I'm surprised that they actually did that. So that's cool. Um,
Uh,
this is what struck me was you're probably 26 filming 27 when this came out, right? Everybody, I mean, everybody's very fresh faced, young. Was this like a blast filming this with this group of guys? Were you guys? I know you were never like a major partier, but were you guys like going out and causing? Oh, what was this? What was the scene like during filming?
It
Was there
was
troublemakers on the set?
not really. It was a blast. It was as good as you imagined it. Not so much in terms of partying, actually. I mean, we'd go to the pubs every once in a while and tie one on or something like that. But we just had a great time. I mean, it was so much fun. It was first we were sent to this boot camp, which was intense. It was like a week. In the middle of England, living in an abandoned sort of castle. It was crazy. Norman Castle, built in
Mm,
like the 1500s, and we're in there, and it's like us and pigeons on cots, and they'd wake us up at dawn, and we'd have to do all these crazy exercises, and they beat the shit out of us. It was
wow.
so much fun. It was really really bonding. It did exactly what they needed us to do because the way they shot it, we were very separate. Like they did all the cockpit stuff at one time, and then 3 weeks later they'd go to the waist gunners, and then to the ball turret, and so it was like we were very separated. So they wanted us to feel really tight as a unit before we got into that plane, and got separated.
Yeah, it was actually even the scene of the final mission was
Yeah,
actually quite tense. The For the 1990, I felt that even
yeah,
the special effects were pretty good, right? It was pretty I was on the edge of my seat because I hadn't seen it in so long. I almost forgot exactly what had happened. There was the classic scene, of course, of the soup in the soup
right.
can exploding that I did remember from when I was a kid.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
here's one other thing that kind of struck me when I was watching, and I wonder if you do this with your movies. Is like everybody else remembers when I was 26, I looked like this, and you actually have these almost actors have like more footage of themselves, I think, than any normal person, unless you're taking all these home movies. Is that wild to like when do you rewatch older film and then it kind of brings you back to how you were at that point in your life?
Yeah, totally. It's like watching it's like looking at a photo album. You're like, oh, I remember that day. Oh man, and if it's
Right.
and the farther away you are from it, you're just like, oh wow, that's amazing. Look how young we were. Look how much fucking fun we had. It was. I mean, there are times when you're looking at the day and you're like, oh Christ, that day was fucking hell. Or that dog,
Yeah.
like that dog was a pain in the ass. Oh
Oh,
my
really? Yeah,
god.
your dog,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. What was his name? Scranton or
I don't
Scruffy
remember.
or Scampy? Scampy. Oh,
Scampy.
fuck that dog. It was constantly. I basically anytime you saw me with that dog, I am covered in bacon grease because that dog wouldn't do anything with me unless I was covered in bacon grease. I was constantly feeding it, and yeah, it was
Wow.
total pain in the ass.
Eh,
But yeah,
So, last question on this. This obviously also where is this where you first meet Eric? Because
no,
obviously you have.
Eric went to SC for about a year,
Oh, so you
and
knew him from before.
I knew him from before, but he was so pretentious and so awful at college.
Yeah.
He wanted nothing to do with me, and then we got cast in Memphis Belle, and of course Eric Stoltz at the time. A lot of young actors were like following the quote unquote method.
Hmm.
So they you had to call them by their name, their character name, like 24/7, even
Uh,
during the weekends, and I just Eric was a follower of that, and we had to call him Danny the whole
right.
time we were filming, and it was just so ridiculous. I remember being in a pub once with him, and I don't know, some girl or I don't know something. I was like, "Hey, Eric, Eric, take a look at this, Eric."
And he wouldn't
Yeah,
respond.
he wouldn't look at me. He's pointing away, and I'm like, "Eric," and he's just still, and I'm like, "Oh fuck, Danny," and he's like,
Yeah.
"Yes." I'm like, "Oh jeez." I was like, "Forget it."
So you became friends later in life, then, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, we did a play together, and
Okay.
yeah, in New York, right after Memphis Belle, and yeah, we were friendly. He was just
Right.
pretentious and ridiculous.
Okay. So now at this point, let's go back to the grandpa thing because I remember this movie being pretty big for the family. Shaw, and you got Shaw in the jacket. I got to say, that, oh,
Hmm.
this is the other comment. The jackets were unbelievable. I almost need to
Yeah.
get one. Of course, I don't live in an area where there's snow, but if I ever was forced to go back to the East Coast, one of those jackets are amazing. So the costumes I loved. But were you now at a point with Grandpa where like, okay, he's realizing this is working. And then also because of the whole World War II thing, I mean, I know he wasn't there during the battle. Was this a bit like a turning point with him at
Well,
all?
it's really
Or
funny that
like,
it's funny that you're bringing this up because you're picking up on something that it was a turning point for my father and I because he came to the set. He was not a fan of movies. He thought that Hollywood was just a bunch of drug addicts, and sex addicts. Like
yeah,
he
yeah.
did not respect the art form at all. And
Mm,
so he came to the set and he saw how much work, like, outside the window, there were all these models and stuff like that. It was very old school special effects. There was no green screen. There was
yeah.
no, it was just models. And they had to do it in perspective and like how big would a plane look outside of the window and, left and the right. And he met all these craftsmen and the whole crew, and he realized, holy shit, these people are really smart, and a lot of thought and a lot of work and a lot of imagination goes into making a film. It's not just a bunch of drug addicts and trying to get laid.
Yeah, yeah, right, of
um,
course. Yeah, yeah.
and so that was a real turning point for him, to see that. And but he still was kind of tight-lipped about most things. But yeah, I remember him being kind of like interested in that topic.
Okay, but and then also sort of in the same realm here, at this point of your career, are you feeling though that like, hey, I'm pulling this fucking thing off? Right. And I know I mentioned this to you the other day. Like every actor comes to LA, it's a similar dream. Hundreds of people stream into LA to either become a model or an actor or something. And a lot of them, like as Grandpa was worried about, 95% or maybe even more probably get one commercial and then their career's over or something like that. And they go back to Missouri miserable. Right. Was it here or was it later that you're feeling like, okay, this is happening? Were you now confident after these kind of couple big movies that like things are going in the right direction?
Hmm. I don't know. That's a tough. I don't know too many people in show business who are like, and go, "Hey, I made it. I made it." I mean, even people who have Academy Awards, and I mean, yeah, get projects greenlit. At the
Right.
it's a funny thing. I mean, you're only as good as your last film, and it's always a threat. Like
Yeah.
it all can
Right.
go
Right.
away pretty quickly. So I haven't really had many times where um, I've been like, oh, all right, I've made it. I've done something.
Well,
I'm usually
maybe not
go
I've
ahead.
made it, but at least okay, I'm a working actor in Hollywood.
Yeah,
At like I don't
yeah,
have to wait like this. I don't need to move back to Jersey. Like okay, at least I got over
yeah,
the hump of like shit. This I'm gonna hopefully be. I mean, but the funny thing that you're saying actually, when I listen to Smartless, I listen to a lot of these other podcasts. Some of the biggest stars actually say what you're saying. That they're
yeah,
even now they just happy to be working and they don't know
yeah,
if it's even and they're so I know what you're saying. Like even I
yeah.
mean, I don't know about the Tom Cruises of the world, you know what I mean? But like, so I get what you're saying. Okay, so now let's segue 1997. Okay, we've jumped
Okay,
7 years.
all
Okay,
right,
we're gonna
yeah,
talk Hercules. Okay,
okay,
now what's more? Okay, before we get into the holy shit, I booked a Disney role, which must have been an unbelievable feeling. Before we get into that, how did you segue over the years into just doing the voiceover stuff? Was that just a skill you picked up from obviously being in plays and TV and fit like, or was that something special you had to learn along the way? Like, how do you even start going off to auditions for voice?
Well, the way Hercules happened was that it was just a regular audition, and I went into that room, and I was like, "Oh fuck!" Uh, there was everybody who was hot right then
Mm,
in that room. I mean, it was like Kiefer Sutherland, Rob Lowe, Andrew McCarthy, like every hot actor, and they were all talking to each other and knew each other, and I'm like, oh god, what am I doing here? I'm never going to get this, because I don't know if you know this, but Disney films didn't hire famous actors to do their voices until Robin Williams. Robin
mm.
Williams was the first person to have a name and to do a voice. Like otherwise, like you don't know who did uh you know Ariel. Like I
Right.
mean,
Yeah. Or Aladdin. You're right. Yes. Good
yeah.
call. Yeah. Okay.
So this is they were like, oh, we can get really top actors, really famous actors to come in. And so they auditioned all these people, and I somehow, by some miraculous thing, I got it, and it was it was amazing. It was crazy.
How many rounds did you have to go through, like
Oh,
of
like
them whittling?
three or four. Yeah, three or
And did
four.
you
Yeah.
already do some voiceover auditions before? I guess
No,
that was
I
still.
it's
You
the
just
first
saw
one.
this. You're like, screw it. Like, let's go for this. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Totally lucked
Okay,
out.
so now take me back to what the hell was the? I mean, and you're right. I guess it wasn't until Robin Williams that big actors were getting these, but that still must have been like this massive deal. What
Mm,
was that feeling like of holy shit? I'm the voice of Hercules.
okay, so while you're doing it, it's just other people that are coming up to you, and you're like, "Oh my God, you're part of like Disney history. Your voice is going to last forever and ever and ever." And at the time, you're like, "I don't know. I mean, is it? You
Yeah.
have no idea." And it takes 3 years. It takes a long time, because it was the old-fashioned way where they hand drew the whole characters, and um, you know, uh, I never met any of the other actors until the opening night. Well, I sort of watched Jimmy Woods one time, and
Mm.
that was hilarious. He was just like insane, totally
So
insane.
you actually segue nicely into my next question. Is there no interfacing of the actors? You're just filming. I mean, I know I've heard this before when I'm listening to the other podcasts. There's no scenes where it's you and the anybody else. You're just literally saying your line. How hard is that though to have reactions and like the inflections in your voices when you don't have someone to bounce it off of?
It's crazy. It's crazy hard. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And but the editors, and I mean, the one thing working with Disney animation was that everyone does has been at their job for like 25 years, and they're so good at their job. Like usually when you work on a film, it's like some kid who just wrote a script, and he's just learning how to make a film, and like everyone is sort of new and learning their jobs, and but when you work with Disney animation, it's like an institution, and
Mm.
people are so good and so well versed, so you feel like, oh wow, these people really know what they're doing, and
And
you
they've
just
got this great support around you. And okay, that's
yeah,
interesting. What here's the craziest thing. I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but for some reason, I think when this came out, I was a bit old. I was 18. I was partying. I
yeah,
didn't ever. I don't know how this is possible, but I don't think I ever watched it in its entirety until just recently. So Jack, I was going through because I have Disney Plus, and I was going through all the titles, and I'm like, have I actually watched it? I've seen scenes with Kiri and and so we watched it with Jack, and I actually really dug it. I was like, okay, it, Danny DeVito's in it, as you were saying,
yeah,
James Woods. It was a
yeah,
pretty great cast.
so
I
good.
liked some of the songs. It was actually pretty well done, and I
It
think it
is.
doesn't like I'm an early 90s purist, of course. I'm a Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast era purist. So this is a little bit later, but I don't know.
Hmm.
I think it should get more of a due as actually a pretty darn great movie. But what's funny is you still are like, you're connected to this forever, right? So you're still even doing um, autograph stuff. I think you were talking about like recently, a million years later. So it's
Yeah,
definitely.
I literally just sent an autograph, of the poster for Hercules today. I just
Wow.
went to
I
some
think we need a
theater.
new one maybe for Jack at some point when he's old
Oh
enough to know
yeah,
what the hell's going
definitely.
on. Yeah, I think we got to
Yeah,
bring it back in the household.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so let's make a big segue here. I've been using that term a lot. Okay, let's talk about theater. I know you sort of started it all the way back in Jersey. You then probably did theater throughout. I haven't really brought it up yet. I want to go to 2001, Lobby
Okay.
Hero.
Oh yeah, this is a
Okay,
famous story of
I know
you
which
and
we'll
I.
get. Yeah, which we'll get into now. I listen, I remember I was dragged to a lot of plays during this run with the family, sometimes with you and them, sometimes like your friends or whatever. I
Uh-huh.
remember there's a lot of
Uh-huh.
we would every time we'd come to Jersey, we'd all go to like a play. I remember this being amazing. This is probably the most entertaining play I've ever watched. I thought you were fantastic in it. I loved the character because I'm 22, so anything to do with sex or whatever, and probably I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Um, and what's so funny to me now is it is well. Let's talk about like it's Kenny Lonergan, who now was more well known because of Manchester by the Sea and all this stuff, which I want to get back to later because I actually loved that movie. What was working with him like?
Well, he's amazing. He's kind of like a very quiet and
Right.
he sort of complains a
Dry.
lot. Yeah, he's very
Okay.
dry, very
Yeah.
funny, very like not impressed by really anything. Um, but it's so funny you bring that up because I have such a strong memory of you, and it's funny that you're like, "Oh, I love that play," because I don't know if you remember, but
Yeah.
you, I saw you after the play, and you were like, "I don't understand. Why did you rat him out? That was bullshit. I didn't like this play."
So so okay, so hold on. Who rats who? I just remember you do get in trouble
My
at the end, but
my character,
who do you,
uh, he gets ratted out because he's having an
yeah,
affair with some woman, and
right.
then he
Right.
he does some unsafe. I'm like a bad cop. I'm a bad cop,
Yeah, yeah.
I think I rat somebody out. Whatever. And you were angry because I wasn't the good guy in the thing.
Oh,
I'm
you
uh,
rat somebody out. Oh, wasn't
yeah,
that
my
you got
character ratted
okay.
somebody out.
Yeah, so of course the famous story is we go down, we meet, and which is now funny because now I'm really, realizing who I had met at the time because now he's of course, quite famous director and writer. And I think I did say that I was unhappy with the writing at the
Yeah,
end.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You're
but
like,
of
I don't
course, I mean,
understand.
I'm not surprised now though because of how I have this show and I am not really scared to voice my opinion to a lot of people as you know, right? What I also want to ask you here, though, is there's obviously a much different muscle of theater acting than to film than to TV. Can you describe that to the like? Because you're not just shooting and then cutting and going and sitting in a trailer. You literally have to be there. You know what I mean? You might leave the stage and come back, but what is that like to be on for hours? You know what I mean? What's the difference here for the listener?
Well, theater is an actor's medium. It's fantastic for actors because you have this audience that gives you so much energy every night. You have a month of rehearsal where you really get to explore and what is your character doing? What does he mean? How do you say that line? Um, and it's just glorious for an actor. Whereas film and television is less glorious
Mm.
because you shoot out a sequence. The crew just wants to go to lunch. You have to get these little moments just perfect, and it's a lot more self-conscious. Whereas when you're on stage and you're looking at the other actor's eye, and you've got the audience right there. Yeah, there's just something about the flow and the energy, and then you're going to go out afterwards and have a drink, and it's just a fantastic community and feeling, and uh, that's it. In terms of technique, really, all you have to do is be louder on stage.
Mm.
I mean, that sounds kind of dumb, but even now, though, in theaters, actors have lost the ability to really, project well. So they have microphones all over the place. So
Oh
even
wow.
now, actors can get away with speaking in a very intimate way, because their microphones hidden and they sort of project out. So, yeah, there is no difference. There is no,
Okay.
acting is acting.
And so would you say, and I'm going to come back to this later, but do you prefer doing a play versus a movie, or is it just
Well,
different?
yeah. I mean, they're great. I mean, they're great things. When you think of like a movie like Argo, where you get to go to Turkey and work with all these amazing people and have these incredible
Mm,
experiences and be part of it's all about the writing. If a play is well written, it just works like a charm and you nail the audience every night. If the movie's well written, it's just a joy to act. The
mm,
television show is well written, you just feel it, and it's the whole crew, everybody's excited about doing the scene and working. And if it's not well written, it doesn't matter what the medium is. If it's
mm.
if it's a if it's a piece of shit and you're just like, oh fuck, God, how do I say this line? It's just so miserable and it's
Fuck.
harder to memorize. It's like the people are miserable. You're just like, I'm doing it for the money. Like
Yeah, yeah. Wow. So,
yeah,
okay, one last theater question is, because I hear about this in Smartless all the time. Because Sean Hayes is a big theater actor,
yeah,
as you
yeah,
probably know. The
yeah.
workload, though. How do you do this many
Oh,
shows? It's
it's
almost over
so
the top.
easy.
Why do
Are you
they?
kidding me? Are you kidding me?
It's
Okay,
every single 6 nights a week for months and months and months. Like, aren't you tired? Like, I don't get that.
it's the easiest gig in the planet. First of all, you're only at work for 2.5 hours, right?
Okay, all right. But you're giving your whole soul and body. I mean, because just I know somewhat a little bit. I can relate because my job, I'm training and I do these multiple day seminars where I have to be on. I'm almost like a character. I've told you about this before, where it's like you
Mhm.
can't then you have to not be perfect, but you're sort of acting in front of people and you're delivering. And when I'm done, I'm definitely exhausted. If like I do two full, and again I'm doing full days, but the whole next day I'm definitely so it just blows my mind that you can do it 6 days for months, but you're saying it's fine because you're just the energy keeps you going.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, the rehearsal, and then there's a tech week where you're rehearsing during the day and doing the play at night, and that's grueling. That's
Mm,
grueling, sure. But um, generally theater, it's a lot of fun. I can't
okay.
complain about like my wife's a nurse. You know what really hard work is. And
Okay,
every
sure.
time I come home and I'm like, wow, I had a really long day, and she's like, really? Did you have a
Yeah.
long day? Really? Was it
Okay,
hard? People bringing you water and lunch, and everyone
that's
treating
funny
you so
because I
well.
think of production as the most grueling, and but that's being the assistant, and I that's why I got out as
Yeah,
quick as possible. I won't do those early call times and those long days. You kidding me? That's
yeah,
why.
it's
That's
crazy.
not to go on a whole tangent here, but I thought that's why we had factory laws, and I feel like Hollywood's the one place it doesn't apply to. You can keep these poor people on set for 20 hours, just give them a little overtime, and then say, "Be back in 6, John." You're like, what? It's to me,
Yep.
it's like inhumane. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's a
No.
whole nother thing.
Yeah.
So it's funny. Okay,
It's true.
now we've made it to 2003. Okay. I wasn't actually going to cover this, but I think with all the listeners, because I want to get to damages, I want to get to a couple other things here. The listeners, though, have to hear about the OC. Uh, I think it's one of your, I think, biggest gigs as far as just the following aspect, right? And over time, nostalgia. Like, let's just at least talk about the cultural explosion of this, and also just like how fun of a ride this probably was. Did you think it was going to be, I guess, this big when you first got the job? Like, what the hell did you even think was going to occur with this show?
I didn't. Well, Doug Liman directed the pilot, so Doug
Right,
Liman is a great
right.
director. So I was like, oh, well, okay, this is interesting. Doug Liman doesn't direct a lot of pilots, and I auditioned and got it. I was psyched, and um, but I didn't think it was going to be big until my girlfriend at the time, Corinne. watched the pilot, and she was like, "Oh, this is good. This is going to be huge." And I was like, "Really?"
Yeah,
Like,
right.
like, I mean, I had no idea. I thought it was kind of like a 90210, but fortunately, that part of the parents was a little bit larger. But I thought it
Yeah.
was like, oh, is it going to be just like a nighttime soap? Like, I mean, it was very, and then when I saw the pilot, the music was so good. Like
Mm.
when you read a script, you don't think about the music. And for me, it was like the first show that played like really good music, like
The
really,
OC soundtrack era was a big thing in
yeah,
my
crazy,
generation's
yeah,
life. Like
yeah,
Din still talks about
yeah.
OC soundtrack volume 1. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah. Well, actually, I remember like being able to talk music with you finally because
Right.
we were never on the same page. Like you would talk to me about Pearl Jam, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, Pearl Jam. I never heard of him." And then I'd go and listen to him, and I'd be like, "Oh, I love Pearl Jam." And then you'd be like, "Ugh, Pearl Jam sucks."
Yeah,
I'm
because
into,
Postal Service was on it and Phantom
yeah,
Planet and a lot of these
yeah, all
bands.
these
I think I
amazing,
can.
yeah, that you're
Yeah,
into, and Interpol, right?
I think Interpol had a song on one of them.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. This is the way we connected. I was like, yeah, Interpol, and you're like, those guys. Yeah,
So, one other thing struck me here thinking about this show is now you've gone from like a space camp where you were the young star to now you're the parent of this fleet of young stars. What was that like shift, if you will, right? Was that strange to now finally be like a parent on a show to this whole new generation of young stars?
yeah. It was really interesting to be the older guy because I, definitely remembered. I remembered how tough it was to become, sort of slightly famous. I was never as famous as those guys were at such a young age, but I had a taste of it, and it's harder than you imagine. And I remember seeing those kids sort of struggle with it, and be really unhappy on the show, and feel as though that they're gonna become movie stars, and that this show is ruining their movie career, and saying all this stuff. And I was like, oh God, guys,
Mm, just
I
relax, like chill.
yeah, enjoy the moment, enjoy
Right.
this, because this success doesn't come around. I mean, when you're young and you get a little bit of success, you feel two things. You're like, okay, this is the stepping stone to me becoming, getting an Oscar by the time I'm 30.
Mm,
And also you feel fraudulent. You feel
mm,
like, why am I getting this attention when I was in an acting class with 9 people that were way more talented than I am? And why did I get this job? It's like this crazy insecure place. And I saw, those kids sort of went through that. And um, but Peter Gallagher and Kelly Rowan and Mindy, they were great to work with, the other
mm.
parents, and we were all like, oh gosh, yeah, I remember when I was young. Oh God, I
Right.
hope they hang in there.
So, one other question here, but I do want to just for the listeners bring up that I did get hammered at the premiere party, and it
That's
definitely
right.
was
That's
probably
right.
somewhat embarrassing. I'm
Didn't
glad
you
you
throw up in the bushes or
DeWalt
something
did.
like that?
DeWalt threw
Well,
up in
oh yeah.
the planter at the pool. I think, hugged everybody. It was our first open bar. But for the listeners, I worked as a PA on multiple episodes. I then was
Yeah.
the reason why I was at the Christmas party was because I was also the intern in the office, right? So I was
That's
very
right.
connected to the show. Um, but I'm glad we're very in sync here today because my next question was going to be like, at this point in your career, I gotta say, because most like when I bring up that you're my uncle, and then I always bring up Jimmy Cooper, and I gotta say, especially people my generation, a lot of people know you from that role. It's definitely one of your larger, at least that people know you from type roles, right?
You know who knows me in that role are
Yeah,
Italians. Oh my God. Italy, I just got back from Italy, right? And
yeah.
everywhere I went, it's like, hey, Jimmy Cooper. Oh my
Oh,
God, Jimmy Cooper from the Ose, yeah, fantastic, Jimmy Cooper. I'm like, it was hilarious. I like Corey and I were just like, oh my God, it's like for some reason the OC is huge in Italy.
That's so wild. I'm gonna
I
come
know.
back later that to that question because I want to hear what you most get recognized with. But let's table that until a little bit later.
Okay.
I want to
Okay.
go back to your to the fame, and you just brought this up because my next question was at this point you're definitely, obviously not a Tom Cruise, but you're definitely getting more well known throughout. How did you deal with fame? And you kind of already answered it, but I want to go back to a little bit like fame throughout your career at this point, and also ego, because you've always kind of, to me, been a down to earth Uncle Tate. You've never really been one of those egomaniac guys. But so I guess it's a two-part question. Like how did you sort of mentally deal with this, this fame roller coaster and ego roller coaster over these last 15 years that we just discussed?
Hmm. Well, I mean, it's funny. I sort of think of this conversation. I remember we were making Space Camp, and Kate Capshaw turned to me and she said, "God, I hope you don't get famous."
Mm,
And I was like the worst thing you could have said to a
right,
young actor who's just gotten his first big role in a big movie, which we thought was going to be a big movie.
right.
I was just like, and I said, why would you say that? And she's like, it's just because I just hope that you have like a long career filled with, varied roles, and you get too high or too low. You just sort of like are steady. I hope that for you. And I really didn't like that,
Mm,
because so, but I realized that, how lucky, uh, you know, I am. I mean, just to be able to be a working actor is like crazy. I mean, I've been doing it for 40 years, over 40
right.
years.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's insane that I'm still getting to go on sets and I get to direct and I get to act and I still get, I'm still part of it. It's unbelievable to me. Now, there's that side which is deeply grateful, and then there's, to be honest, there's a side of like, fuck, why can't I be a bigger star? Why, god
Mm,
damn it, why, how come I never made it to those fucking upper echelons? How come I've never been, I've never been nominated for an Oscar? I'm just not talented enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm just not, whatever. I never got the shot. I don't have the right agent. Like all this
yeah.
bullshit comes into your brain. So it's, it's either I'm either one where I'm like, God, why aren't I better? Or I'm just grateful. I'm like on my knees. I can't fucking believe that I have this life.
This long-standing career, because
Yeah.
I gotta say, when I clicked on the IMDb and I mean, you're in like 121 things technically, so I'd say that's a pretty damn fucking good career. Uh, but so I'm glad you mentioned this though, because they bring it up on Smartless a lot. Also you have to have very thick skin, like you're because even the bigger guys and gals
Mhm,
are
mhm.
rejected way more than their cast. So
Yeah.
how the hell have you know what I mean? And you kind of were addressing it there. Is it's a tough town to somehow not get things hundreds of times over and
Yeah.
still just like be able to just go to the next gig, go to the and then you know what I mean? Like that's obviously got to be tough.
Well, it is tough emotionally, but I wouldn't characterize it as having thick skin.
Mm,
It's your desire, your like overwhelming need to be part of a production, of to get that role, to be in that movie, to be in that play, to direct that episode is just like so exciting to you that you'll take, okay, yeah, okay, you hated me, you're not a fan, okay, you
right,
think I
right.
you're like, okay, all right, fine, you're just sort of like, you have your eyes on the prize.
Mm.
That's how you get through it. It's not that I have like, I'm a tough, I
Well,
can I can take criticism, because I get, I've had some horrible reviews, trust me. Oh
yeah, I
my
know, but I'm
god.
saying you got to be able to roll the punches and kind of like just go to the next one, and not be. They talk about in sports the short-term
Yeah.
memory, like a
Yeah,
closer
the
in
goldfish.
baseball.
You gotta be a goldfish.
Exactly. It's just like
Yeah.
really unbelievable because it's like you're sort of the regular person deals this a couple times in their lives with bad breakups, and actors have to like deal with it like monthly. But
Yeah.
anyway, so it's
Yeah.
sort of an interesting thing that they bring up on Smartless a lot. Okay, let's jump to damages. Okay,
Okay.
2007. We're moving along the order. Now, why this is so special for the listener is because, of course, you come here to the Wally Report for hot TV shows as of now, even though it's an all overarching entertainment show. But I gotta say, this is ranked, and I know Adam will like this when he's listening. This is a ranked, at least in the top 75 to 50 all time show. I haven't unveiled my 100 all time, but that will be later episodes. It is 91% critic on Rotten Tomatoes, 88% audience. I actually was surprised it was that high. Those are some pretty damn good scores. Um, so let's just talk about again. How did you come upon this show? Was this also just a standard audition that you stumbled upon, or was this like
Yeah,
a
total
take
total
connect?
standard. No, no, total standard audition. I just auditioned like everybody else, and thank God they gave me the
Wow.
role. Yeah, but it's funny because we talked about feeling as though I made it. Like those moments where oh wow, I literally we were watching. It was like a family watch. We were like you, Marnie, a bunch of people were in my living room watching an episode of Damages,
Mm.
and at the end of it you just went off. You're like, this is back in the 90s or
No,
2000s.
2007.
Yeah,
2007 it
2007.
drops.
you
Yes.
said you said this is my this is in my top 5 shows. By the way, the listeners should know that this top 5 mentality has
Has
been
been
going
going on a
on
long
for a long time.
Yeah.
And and I remember thinking, wow, because I don't make stuff. My family is a very discerning group of people. They do not like
Right.
anything. I mean, nobody in my family likes the shit I do. I mean, I've never gotten compliments from like hardly anybody except for my mother and your mother and
Right.
maybe Eileen. But
Yeah.
my brothers, my father, forget about it. Nobody compliments or goes, "Oh, I really love that movie that you were in," or
Mm.
"You're really good in that." And you were the first person to be like, "Oh, this is a really good show. This is fantastic." So I was like, "Oh, wow! I finally created something that my family likes."
And now it's on my all-time,
I know.
show
I know.
list.
Yeah.
So a couple there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, I
Sorry.
could go
Sorry.
all
Yes.
no, no, I'm saying no, this is great. I could go all day just on damages, but I'm trying to be a little bit concise here. So
Okay.
you meet Adam because of this show, or did you
Yeah.
already know
No.
him
No.
at all?
No. No. No.
So they
Yeah. No. I
just
didn't know.
cast you, the whole team cast you, boom, you're in Tom Shays. Got it. So you meet
Yeah.
the Kessler brothers because of this whole situation.
Yeah.
Okay. That was one question I had. Now, did you know, again, you were talking about this before with the great writing. Did you know by reading the script that, okay, this is not just a paycheck, this is a fucking good script. I'm feeling this. Or is it just another one where like, man, you don't really know maybe until later? Or did you feel right away, okay, this is we're on to something here?
Well, Glenn Close was in it, so she was already cast. So I was like, oh,
Right.
okay, she's a great actress. This has got to be good. I didn't really know if it was any good. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good. And you know, they were writing it as we were going along.
Mm.
And so we had no idea, the characters had no idea what was going to happen in the next episode. And I remember getting pages just super late. Like we'd be on the set and pages would come in and they're like, oh, we're going to do this scene now instead of that scene. And we're going to say these lines instead of those lines. And we'd be reading them. And every single time we'd be like, oh, this is good. Oh, this is so
Wow.
good. Yeah. Yeah. They would come in late, the pages, but every time they always got better and better and better.
So speaking of Glenn Close,
Yes.
you're casting a show. I think I overheard you one time talking about this, saying someone else was like, "Holy shit, what was it like working with you?" And you kind of made, I think you had said some sort of Michael Jordan type reference. I just for this episode, I just went back and rewatched episode 1 and 2 for my studious information. Okay.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
you got to sort of be Glenn Close's right hand man. It was like unbelievable. What was that like? I mean, at this point, of course, you've worked with a lot of people, right? But this had to have been unbelievable. That like not you're just in the movie or the show with her, but you're literally in all these high tension scenes. What was that whole thing like?
Well, when you work with great actors, it makes your job easy. I just had to just like show up and react to what she was giving me, and say my lines back to her. And it's like playing tennis. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
when you play tennis with somebody who's really good and they give the ball back and you play better.
right, right.
So that's what it was like to work with her. I mean, she's definitely like the smartest person in the room.
Mm.
She would, more when I directed on the show, but even as an actor, she'd be like, "Well, so this scene is about this, and what's going on now is, and what really is happening is we're doing this, right?" And we'd all be like, "Oh yeah, right, yeah, I guess, yeah, that's
She could
true, yeah,
see things like the bigger
yes."
picture and far ahead and the deeper meanings.
Yeah, or she'd ask
Interesting.
questions about them, which is really, of the director and the writers and the producers. She'd be like, "Hey, wait a second. What about this? And why aren't we doing that?" And they'd be like, "Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, okay, let's do that," or whatever.
So I know you're saying that she probably because she was so good made it easy for you, but there must have been like definitely some pressure like shit I gotta deliver. I'm in a lot of scenes with her, right? So maybe probably initially, you know what I mean, because like
Yeah.
and that also with the sport analogy, when you're playing the better team, you step
Hmm.
up your game, right? and,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so it must have been like, yeah, there's probably a mixture though. There must have at least been some like, man, I gotta deliver on. And one thing that struck me, I gotta say, rewatching, you were very calm and collected in these scenes. You were like, and maybe it was just your lines, but you seemed like, oh shit, Tate's been around at this point. You're just in this in like she fires you. And I was like, and that was actually an amazing moment in the pilot. You had to yell back at her and really like, kind of go after her a little bit. So there must have been at least some tension on your side of like, I gotta deliver here.
It's funny. Yeah, that scene when she fires me, it was sort of like, I knew that I had signed a contract to be in the show, so I
Yeah.
was like, "Huh, I wonder how." So I didn't really take it so seriously, her firing
Okay.
me, because I knew
Yeah.
that I must be in the show. I'm scheduled to be in all the episodes, so something must be going on. So, um, yeah, I don't know what it was, but I wasn't nervous around her as an actor. Now, as a
Mm,
director, that was a different story. And
mm.
she, I don't have I never told you the story about the first day I directed Glenn
No, but it
Close on
goes nicely
Damages?
into this episode because you're coming right
Okay.
up on it's just like all day you're coming right up on my next series of questions. So but tell
Okay.
this is good for the
Okay,
viewer
so
here.
here's the story. So I was an actor on the show, and I had directed an OC, and I really wanted to get into directing. And they said, "Yeah, okay, so shadow a bunch of episodes, and then we'll give you an episode to direct." So I finally get an episode to direct, and the first 3 days, I'm not working with Glenn. Glenn has those days off, and I'm working with other characters, and it's going great. And but the whole time, the crew is like, "Oh, how is Glenn going to react
Mm,
to a cast member, an
mm,
actor, a new time director,
mm,
um, on this thing?" So I, of course, was so prepared. I was like hyper prepared. I stayed up late. I got up early. I was just like this. I had everything mapped out. I was just filled with ideas and possibilities. And so she gets to the set, and everyone's like, "Oh, okay, this is going to be interesting." And I can't stop talking. I'm like, "Okay, so this scene, you're gonna sit here, and then Rose is gonna sit there, and we're gonna talk about it, and what it's really about, and then I'm talking to here, and then we're gonna put the camera here." And she goes, "Shut up, shut up,
wow.
shut up." She told me 3 times to shut up,
Wow.
and I was like, "Oh my god!" I was horrified. I was
Because
just
it
like,
was like
"Oh
she
my
was too
god!"
many notes and it was annoying her
Yeah,
or like what?
yeah, yeah. It was like, yeah. So I go back to the monitor, and I'm like, action. I'm like totally, totally
Shit.
fucking
Mm,
demoralized. I'm like, my career is over as a director. And she does, and then I proceed to watch a performance that I had never thought of. Like all the shit I had thought of and more was coming out of this simple, wonderful performance. I didn't have to do anything with the camera except turn it on.
mm,
And I realized, oh my God, and so she sort of ignored me for the rest of the time. And a couple of days later, she came up to me and she said, listen, Tate, I'm sorry I yelled at you in front of everybody. But I find that when actors start directing, they don't trust other actors. They just talk too much, and you just need to be quiet and let us do our thing. And that is a lesson that I have learned, and she ended up actually being a huge champion of mine. And I don't really only have a directing career in episodic television because of Glenn Close, because she went to the head of FX and said, Tate Donovan is one of our best directors. You should, and then
wow.
I started working on FX and then Fox and then a bunch of other shows. So yeah,
Wow, because sometimes actually I've found even just with your good, better friends, you can bring up the shitty stuff better, right? You can call people out when you're closer to them. And
yeah,
so
uh-huh,
and then
mm-hmm.
you grow from it. So maybe that I don't maybe
Yeah,
who knows, maybe that's what she was doing because she liked
she
you
was, yeah,
and did like
exactly,
respect it. And then she felt she could actually talk to you like that. I
yeah,
don't know. That's interesting.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. So you segued again nicely into my directing chat, which we're going to go into next. But before we go, I just also want to bring up Rose Byrne, who
Mm,
at the time it was so funny seeing her this young and earlier in her career. Obviously, she had probably already been in Troy and a couple movies. Uh, but now to me, she's one of the best leading ladies in all of Hollywood. Like anytime Rose is on something, I fucking love it. I watched
me too.
Platonic last year. I mean, she's just the
Yeah.
best. She's
She's the
really,
best.
she's
She's the
fucking
best.
unbelievable.
She's
And
unbelievable.
at this point, and I remember I even got to meet her. I don't know if you remember this, but we watched the Damages episode together at your house, and I remember being
Oh
struck
yeah.
because she was so easy going into, and she actually even kind of did a couple like crude jokes, and I was like
Yeah,
so taken
yeah, yeah.
aback that she
Well,
was
she's
like she was
Australian.
like yeah, she was like one of the guys, and so I was totally
Yeah,
like taken away from by her. I was like, so
yeah.
did you catch at this point? Holy shit! I'm in the midst of a future superstar, or was this like? Could you sense this at this time?
Well, in the beginning, yeah, I thought she was like, "Oh wow, this is a really interesting choice for a lawyer, like a young lawyer." Like
Yeah.
I thought that she'd be like sharper and
Mm,
meaner, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." They sort of went for a softer, more sort of almost vulnerable
mm,
woman as opposed to like a young Glenn Close,
right.
And as I started watching the episodes, I saw her become more and more like Glenn Close, or more and
Right.
more like a lawyer. So that was excellent. But um, she's so fucking funny.
Mm,
That's the crazy thing. Like in Damages, you don't get to see it. As a matter of fact, when I directed an episode, um, she would do all these hilarious things, and I was like, oh my God, Rose, you got to keep that in. And they would always cut it out because they didn't want
mm.
Rose to be funny as for a second. Like they just wanted to keep that tension the entire time. But yeah, I mean, I kind of knew. I mean, she's gorgeous. She can do anything. She can be funny, she can be serious, she can be empathetic, she can cry at the drop of a hat. I mean, she is just, and she's so nice to work with. And she's
Mm.
so, yeah, she's the best.
I think she
She's
just
the
has
best.
this really likable quality too. So when you watch, it's just like something's very easygoing, natural, likable, but yes, very funny too. She's just like when Rose is
Yeah.
attached to something, you're like, I'm gonna watch it, you know?
Yeah, me too. I'm the same way about Rose. Yeah.
So directing. So it was perfect. You went into it here. And of course, I did look up the history. The OC was the first gig in 2005. Okay.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Now, so you've done a couple gigs, but I want to kind of go into how did you slowly learn these skills? Now, you're as an actor for years, you're probably seeing what do directors do. They're directing you. You're on set. You're probably picking up all these type of skill sets, and you're like, oh, I could maybe do that one day, right? And then you're probably were friendly with directors that over time that have given you some pointers. Now, the question is, when did you first decide, okay, I want to do this, right? I'm interested in this. Was that like right, but was that already for years that you were thinking about this, or was that right at the time when you got the OC gig?
Well, I was always interested in directing because as a kid, you just watch films and you're just like, oh shit, Scorsese and Coppola and all those big guys in the '70s. I was just like, wow, they're
Hmm.
artists. But I always was sort of drawn to acting, and I thought maybe through my acting, I'll get a chance to direct. And when I was on the OC, I didn't work a lot. I was like, in one or two scenes, and like
Mm,
it's like 1 or 2 days a week. I'd saunter in, and it was just boring, to be honest. And so I asked if I could start shadowing directors, and that was amazing. I
mm,
I was always the kind of actor that I never hung out in my trailer. I always was on set, and when people were doing other scenes, I just sort of hang out by the monitors and talk to the directors and the writers and the other actors and the crew. And so I just sort of naturally was that kind of guy, and it was so much fun. I just shadowing. I just was like, oh my god, this is so. And I shadowed really great directors who were very encouraging. I remember one time he's like, all right, I'm gonna block this scene with the actors, and I'm gonna block the cameras. Blocking is where people go, like where
yeah,
the
yeah,
actors
yeah.
move to, and
Right.
where do you put the cameras. And then I want you to tell me how you would have blocked it. And so he does the scene, and then he comes to me, and I'm like, oh well, I would have done this, and then move the camera here, and on that line I would have done this. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna steal that. So
Wow.
he went back, and he was like, oh, so we're gonna put the cameras here, we're gonna move, we're gonna cross the line on this line. And anyway, it was a very encouraging atmosphere from day one. I mean, I've been really lucky about directing, just in terms of people being super supportive. And yeah, I mean, it's yeah, I've been
Yeah, because
lucky.
Jason Bateman on Smartless obviously taught. He was an actor for many years. He also has done
Yeah.
some directing. So they talk about one thing I wanted, because I'm not an actor extraordinaire like you on the set and already understanding what they're doing. So for more of the novice listener, what the hell is the director doing? I'm just curious, like,
No,
because
no,
you
no.
can break
Yeah,
it down.
yeah,
Like, what are
yeah,
they? We
yeah,
all know what the actors are
yeah.
doing. What is the
Right,
director really doing through these movies and these shows? Like, what do you have
right.
to
Okay.
monitor and
So, so,
direct?
so basically, he's trying to tell the story as best he can. So he does that by first blocking the actors. So the actors come in, they know their lines, and you go, okay, so you're going to say your line there, and you let the actors sort of figure it out. And if they need help, you come in and you're like, well, why don't you try sitting down when you say that line? And they're like, oh, okay, that works, or that doesn't work, or. And so you work with the actors and you sort of sculpt the scene, and you get a sense, oh, that's what this scene is about. And then you let the actors go to hair and makeup and take off, and then you talk to the crew, and you go, okay, so we're going to need a big wide shot here,
Mm.
and then we're going to put the camera there, and then we're going to come around and get her coverage. And I would love if we could get, like a tracking shot or a dolly over here, and then you work it out with the director of photography mostly.
That's what I was just thinking, because obviously he's involved in those decisions there too, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, and
okay.
sometimes the director of photography is like, "Hey, listen, this is what we should do," and you're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, that's a great idea," or you have a really strong idea, and he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. We'll do that." And it's great being a director because you're constantly, basically, it's like best idea wins, right? Like, I
Mm.
mean, I literally have gotten amazing ideas from like the sound guy or a prop guy. Like
Mm.
um, there's a I did an episode of Glee where one of the characters is singing "Pretty Young Thing" (PYT) by Michael
Yeah,
Jackson,
yeah,
and it's shot in he's singing in real time, but it's shot in slow motion. All the dancers are moving and he's moving in slow motion, but his so they just speed up the music, and I blocked it, and the prop guy came up to me. He said, "Hey, we could speed up the sound and shoot this scene, and it's going to look super cool. It's going to look like it's in slow motion, and he's such a good singer, he could just speed it up." And man, it was like one of the most amazing things, and of course I get all the credit just because I listened to the
right.
prop guy. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, okay,
Yeah.
that gives us an idea, because we're kind of wondering what's going on the set all the time. Now, let's move to the 30 for 30 that you did. We're jumping all the way ahead to 2013 now. Okay, we're getting
Okay,
closer to modern day.
we can handle it.
Yeah. So you directed this, right? Now, and
Yeah.
also were a producer on it, and I wanted to double check, you won an Emmy for this. And I think I remembered that, but it's vague now. What
Yeah.
happened with this
So
project here?
So I directed this documentary. It's kind of a long story, but it's an interesting story. So I'm directing a Gossip Girl, right?
Yeah.
An episode of Gossip Girl in
I'm
New
sure
York City.
there's gossip girl fanatics on the Wally Report, but continue.
I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead. Lots of questions. Let's take questions from the Gossip
Yeah.
Girl fans. But and the costume girl, one of the girls who works in the wardrobe department, comes up to me and she says, "Do you like sports documentaries?" And
Hmm.
I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Sports document? It's the only thing I watch. I'm obsessed with sports documentaries. Why?" She's like,
Yeah.
"Well, my husband works for a production company that makes sports documentaries, and um, they're always looking for like fun, cool directors. And would you ever want to do something like that?" I'm like, "Yeah." So they set up a meeting with this producer, by a woman by the name of Maura Mant,
Hmm.
and she sits me down and she said, "Okay, what sports stories do you have?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh, I don't have any. I don't know. I don't have any sports stories. I'm sorry. I'm just like a director. Like if you had one,
Hmm.
I feel as though I'd be able to tell it well, but yeah, I don't have any." And she just looked at me like, "Oh my god, this kid is just like, why am I
What?
talking to this kid?" So I leave totally dejected, and then I get a phone call about a couple of days later, and she's like, "Do you know Arthur Ashe?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been a huge Arthur Ashe fan my entire life." And she said, "Have you read his autobiography?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have read his autobiography." And she's like, "Well, do you remember the letter he wrote to his daughter? He was dying of AIDS, and he wrote a letter to his young daughter, Camera, her name is." And she said, "There's one sentence in that letter says that my brother fought in Vietnam so I could play tennis."
Hmm.
And she's like, "What is that sentence about?" She's like, "I think there's a story in that." And I'm like, "Wow, I forgot about that sentence. That is crazy. Like, what is the story behind that?" So we went and investigated that story and came up with this amazing film about his brother who spent an extra tour in Vietnam, so Arthur could play tennis, and that year he won the U.S. Open, and it sort of started
What
his whole
year
career.
was this? 68, did you say?
Yeah, 68 or
Because I was
69.
looking
Yeah,
at that earlier. I got to have my
yeah,
years. Okay,
yeah.
so I don't think I've
So that
actually watched.
that
Oh,
won an
sorry. Yeah,
Emmy.
go ahead. Oh, yeah. Okay,
No,
that one. Okay, yeah. Finish that
yeah.
thought there. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut that off.
No,
This is
no, and then it just went on to win the Emmy. And the reason why I'm not really a producer on it,
Mm,
but I was given a producer credit because the Emmy doesn't go to the director; it goes to
correct.
the producers. So she was nice enough to put me on the list of producers. So I have an Emmy sitting right here in my
I somehow missed this, but
yeah.
but so that's awesome. So,
Really?
hey,
You haven't you know why you missed it, by the way? This is a classic story of my life in our
yeah,
family. Okay,
yeah,
you ready? The reason why you missed this is because you made a film, you made a music video the same year I made this documentary.
yeah,
And at Christmas, I kept trying to get everyone to watch this Arthur Ashe documentary that I had made for 30
yeah,
for 30. Um, and all anyone wanted to watch was your music video
right. The
of you on
family.
a beach.
Oh, that music video
Yeah,
for
that music
Marnie.
video.
Yeah, yeah, that was
Yeah,
a hot.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
No, I just mean like I remember you had did it, and I think it was also like I'm a big tennis guy, but not as much the classic tennis story. So I wasn't like, oh, Arthur Ashe.
Right.
But because I am a huge 30 for 30 guy, I'm definitely going to go back and watch this now.
It's
So
only 11 minutes long,
I
so
know it's a
you're
short.
yeah,
Plus, I'm more of I need
yeah.
a full size 30 for 30. So this is where I wanted to give you some thoughts here. Now, I know you're not a huge, uh, filmmaker as far as a doc series goes, right? However, I did say make a Wilt doc. You didn't listen to me, and then
Mm.
Showtime did one about a year
Ah,
ago. So, did you see the Wilt doc series that
no,
came
I
out?
bet it's
It was
amazing.
actually pretty great. I'm surprised you haven't
Yeah,
seen it. It's like a 3-part. You got to watch it. So they stole
yeah.
my idea. So here's my next 2 ideas for you. If you ever have time to
Okay,
make a full
good. All right.
documentary, I need a
I
full
wanna
size.
hear
Though.
it.
I can't do this short.
Okay. All right, I gotcha.
One, and staying on tennis, we need
Yeah.
something that is describing why American men cannot win anymore. Okay, because and I don't
Mm.
have the actually I should have written this year down. I think it's 2003. I need to double check it, so don't quote me on this. Is when Roddick won the U.S.
Yeah,
It's either 2002 or 2003, and so now we're
yeah.
going over 20 years of no American men who has won a slam. Now,
Yeah, it's
and I'm
crazy.
still pissed about this, because I cheer for Fritz and all these new guys, but I don't know if they're, so I need a real doc series on why this has happened because the American women are still off and
Yeah,
on
they're
winning.
crazy good. Yeah.
So that I don't really get. The other possibility is if you don't want to do that, even though I think this would be better for you, in the same way, Canadian hockey the
Mhm.
last time a Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup is 1993, where the
Crazy.
Canadians won. So it's over 30 years. They had their chance this year, and Edmonton lost in Game 7.
I
So
know.
an equally amazing doc would be Canada not winning and the anger, and just the devastation and like all the years that because in 94 the Rangers beat the Canucks in 7. So they've been close in certain years. I'm sure there's different points where they made it, so that would just be also an equally like fantastic doc of the suffering of
Yeah,
Canada for 30 years.
yeah.
Anyway, so those are some great topics
But it's
that
kind of like kind of depressing. You want an uplifting
ending.
I
Well,
think
that's
that doc can only be made when a Canadian
when they
team has
win.
finally won or when an American male has won Wimbledon or something like that.
Yes, that's true. So anyway, it could be a 5-year away
Yeah,
project, but I'm
yeah,
just bringing it
yeah.
up and now because the
That's
Wilt
good.
idea got stolen. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
So continuing on the directorial discussion, we're going to cut to 2015 now to Bloodline. Okay. Reason why
Okay.
I'm highlighting this
Yeah.
versus some of the other stuff that you did, because you already talked about damages. I was going to go into the damages, but you already covered that with an amazing story. Bloodline is also not this is ranked even higher than damages. This is a top 30,
No.
yeah, top
Wow.
30 to 40 show ever on the Wally
That's
Report
amazing.
list. Now,
Wow.
here's the weird thing going back, and I don't always agree with the tomatoes, but I'm a tomatoes guy. It's only 62% on the critic and 74 on the audience. But that's only because they average the seasons together. Season 1 was
Uh,
ranked much
mm.
higher, and I disagree. And I guess they ranked some of the other seasons lower. Adam, I disagree if you're listening. I'm a huge Bloodline guy. All seasons So I think tomatoes is not always right. Um, so anytime you're attached to one of these projects, I got to ask you about it. But I think instead of saying, "Oh, how was that?" and this and that, I do want to know. Well, okay, what season? Do you remember what season you came into when you directed? Because I
Yeah, the
don't.
first season.
Oh,
I
so it
think
was
the first
season
season.
one. Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah.
So um, when you come in, right? And you're sort of just like a guest director on one episode, and it's already now getting this critical acclaim that it was getting. What is
Well, it
that?
wasn't,
It
of
wasn't
course,
yet at the
well,
time.
because no, because it's Netflix and you shoot all the episodes.
Right.
Um,
Okay. So no one, you didn't really know that it
yeah,
was going to be
yeah.
so. Okay.
And that was an interesting thing for the cast because I remember them sort of like because when you shoot an episodic television like
Mm,
Damages or something like that, every week you get feedback from the audience, and you're like
mm,
they get reviews or people talk about it in chat groups and stuff like that. So you're going, oh wow, people like this character, and people like blah, blah, blah. But when you shoot a Netflix show, it's all in this sort of world, and
mm.
and nobody sees it until it's all done. And the cast was really like they're like, where is this show going? I don't know what's going on. And the writers need to be here because where's my character headed? And we were lucky on Damages because um every week we got some sort of like we could see,
Right.
oh, that's
Yeah.
what the edit how they're going to edit me, and that's the story that they're headed for. Whereas with these guys they didn't have that, and I sort of basically my role was to be like, hey, trust me, these guys are so good, they're going to make you guys look fantastic, don't
Mm.
worry about it. You may not know what's going on with your character, but that's just how life is, and you got to trust them because they're going to set you up great.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
here's my follow up question that I'm a little bit confused on with TV show directors. I still don't understand why you can't just get one director for a season. Like with a film, you don't switch directors in and out. It blows my mind that TV, yes, there's a lot of episodes. Why don't they just sign in for one director, at least for a fucking season? What is this? Like, isn't that weird with the tone, the integrity of the show, all these different directors coming? Why is that commonplace for television?
Well, most first of all, they do. There are some shows like iRobot, right? Is
Well,
one
it's the
guy
same
and stuff like
director
that.
the whole time,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
got you.
But the reason why they do it is it's way too much work for one human being, even two human beings. It's like there's
Oh,
you've got to prep for a couple of weeks, you shoot for a couple of weeks, and then you have to edit for a couple of days. So it's um it's just way too much work for one person. So that's the technical reason. But the reason why a show will have many different directors and maintain a look and a style is because every director has a tone meeting, which is one of the greatest things you'll
mm,
ever sit through in your entire life. So before your first day on a set, you sit down with the showrunner, the guy who knows everything about the show, and he says, all right, this is how we do our show, and this is how the actors are gonna, this is where we want this character to go, this is where we want this, and it's so much fun, and you're like, oh, you like get the keys to the kingdom. And a lot of the actors and some of the writers and a lot of people don't know what the producer has in mind. And it's a lot of fun, it's
interesting.
really cool. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that explains it more now. I never understood why. I guess it's the amount of, yeah, because that would be
The
tough
amount of
to
work. Yeah.
right. Okay. So last question here, and then I want to go to the upside. Is is it strange though coming in the middle of a season as this guest director and like having to navigate that with all these actors maybe you haven't met yet and just like is it weird sometimes just popping in for this one episode and then you're gone, right? Because you don't have a
Yeah.
rapport with people. Is
Yeah.
that is it tough to do?
It is tough to do. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends on the cast, but some casts are more welcoming than others. But Yeah, it is. It's very tough, and crews and DPs and ADs and actors are all very different, and you're like a substitute teacher. You're coming
Yeah.
in and you're like, okay, how does this classroom work? What kind of kids are they? Oh, okay, they're these kind of kids. All right, let's check it out. And um, you're basically greasing the wheels of an engine that's already running. Especially like I've directed on shows that I did a Hawaii Five O that was on its 10th season. So I'm not
Yeah.
coming in and reinventing the wheel. I'm just like trying to get. I mean, people just want to go home. They
Yeah.
just want to, they just like, all right, let's just do this. I've done this scene 1,000 times. Please don't try to make it different. You know,
You're right.
this
You're
is how
just
we
there
do it.
trying. Okay,
Yeah,
that's so wild.
yeah, yeah.
So let's segue to 2017. This is my last bit of this part, and then I know I've kept you a long time here. We can get into my top five real soon. Um, the Upside. I know you have a small role in this, but I just love this damn movie, and I didn't see it right away. And I know it's the remake from what was the original called? Sorry, I'm
The
forgetting the. Thank
Untouchables.
you. Okay,
The
that's what I thought
Untouchables.
it
Yeah.
was.
Hmm.
I just I just love this movie. It actually turned me on to Kevin Hart. I wasn't a huge Kevin Hart fan. Then I saw this. I'm like, oh, he's pretty damn good. But I really just wanted to discuss the interaction with Bryan Cranston. So talking about Michael Jordan's, and we talked about Glenn Close earlier. Of
Yeah,
course, I'm a
yeah, yeah,
Breaking Bad guy. Most people, it's
yeah,
top five all time on your list. The guy's unbelievable.
yeah,
Your character, you're only in this couple scenes, but you are always with him usually because you're one of his neighbors, right?
yeah, yeah.
What was that like? I mean, I know there weren't huge long scenes, but what is it like working with Brian, and what was that experience like?
Well, he's an actor's actor. He's the kind of guy that all actors love to work with. He's very generous. He's just a cool dude. I mean, just respect the hell out of him, and he's awesome. I remember though, this there was we had to change the scene. I don't know if you remember this scene where I'm holding a dog in my
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
yeah. So that dog was supposed to growl at Kevin Hart, and it was
Mm,
supposed to be
hmm.
like a racist dog, and that was
Yes.
sort of like
Yes.
sort of like, and there were all these lines about my dog growling and me apologizing, but being very clear that uh, that we didn't approve. Both the dog and I did not approve of Kevin Hart's character.
Yes. Right. Yes. I just love that. All that.
And of course, the dog didn't growl at all. It was a terrible dog. It was
You
like,
always
and
get these terrible dogs. That's the theme of
I
the
know.
day.
It's just like, don't work with children and dogs. Okay,
Mm,
they're the worst.
yeah.
That's what W.C. Fields said.
Oh, that's funny.
At any rate, yeah. So I remember, I just have this really fond memory of him being in his wheelchair and just looking at me when the camera was on me and trying to get this dog to growl or be part of the scene that was written, and me just struggling and just trying to make it work, and the pet person coming in, and I maybe if you just give him a treat and hold him this way, and we'll fix it in sound and with post, and it was a nightmare, and him just looking at me with just such pity. He was just like, oh God, like he'd been there, and he knew I was suffering, and he had this like little smile on his face. Like, I don't know. I sort of loved him for that.
Yeah. Last question on this, and then we'll go to a couple series of final career questions that I have. Some pretty great ones. Now, this character, obviously, you're kind of a prick, but I love you in this because it's so not you. You're usually the great guy, the nice guy, you care about everybody. And then I love when you actually have to do sort of more of like a unlikable role. How do you like what do you tap into when you have to do more of like the prick role, if you will? Because again, that's so not really you. You know what I mean? So what do you do to become this guy?
I don't know. It's funny. I don't it's
I mean, it's
you
I
know like
guess it's acting. You could just say, "Well, I am acting." But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
continue. Sorry.
But you don't think of him as a prick. Like I don't imagine my character as thinking like he just wants something different than the lead wants or the
Yeah.
audience wants. So I remember doing 24 with Kiefer Sutherland. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I played this guy who was married to his ex girlfriend, and I didn't like Kiefer Sutherland's character. You know, I didn't like Jack Bauer.
Yes, I
And
remember that.
as I wouldn't like Jack Bauer because who likes the boyfriend, the ex boyfriend of your wife?
Yeah.
And I remember people just hating me, like,
Mm.
just you play such an asshole, and I'm like, I'm not an asshole. I
Yeah.
just don't like Jack Bauer. You know, like you
Yes.
wouldn't like Jack Bauer if you were in my position either.
So you
So
just had to
it's just
tap
that.
into a certain thing, and yeah. I mean, I liked you in it, but like you have to kind of be, worried about Kevin Hart, who the hell this guy is coming into the building, and all these. I thought it
Yeah,
was hilarious.
yeah.
Okay, so here's a couple final series of questions before we get to my top five that I know people are dying for. We've talked about this before. Remember there was that time when you could have done that It's Always Sunny, I think, director job. You turned it down, and I was pissed about it. Is
I
there been
know.
other and throughout your career, I'm sure you've
Mhm.
been booked with things and you've had to turn things down. Is there anything on your list of major turn down regrets that you can cite that would have been fucking amazing, that turned into bigger
Mm.
than you thought they were, or whatever it was?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that, Magnum PI thing where I
Mm.
turned it down because I thought I was going to be a big star when Space Camp came out.
But that was more of just like one reunion thing. There must have been a job or
Yeah.
something throughout the
Yeah.
years that you're like, no, I'm on damages now. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
later you're like, oh my God, it was an Oscar winning film, or
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Gosh, I'm trying to think. Um, there are many examples that I've tried to be like I've auditioned and
that
did
you
not
wish.
get. I mean,
Right.
basically every movie in the 80s and 90s, pretty much I auditioned for um, and did not get.
Yeah,
Um,
okay, I got you.
I'm
So
still waiting to hear on a
that's
couple of
fine.
them.
Okay, so what about this one? And it was probably hard to just point one. In all of your career, in any of these, most fun project you've ever worked on where you had the biggest blast?
That wasn't a play
Yeah, I guess
because
okay, yeah.
theater,
Yeah, okay, so
theater.
non-play
Yeah, yeah.
project.
Well, I would say Argo was pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah.
It was like we were really tight, all those, house guests, they were called, the hostages. And, Grant Heslov was there, and Ben Affleck is great to work with. Actually, Good Night and Good Luck was a
Mm,
blast. That was so much fun. And, George is like,
the
he's
best.
crazy great. He's the best.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to be a movie star, you should be like George Clooney. He is like, I remember one time George was like, okay, they wanted him to shoot a scene, and he checked the traffic. He's like, someone checked the traffic on, on the 101. It was before GPS,
Yeah.
you know, like the 101, we were shooting out in the valley, and the 101 was like jamming up, and he was like, you know what, this is bullshit. I'm gonna let everybody out because the traffic on the 101 is getting miserable, and by the time we finish the scene, everyone's going to be caught in traffic for an hour and a half. So let's just cut now, and then we'll pick it up tomorrow. Like he just does stuff like that. He's just so generous and fun, and yeah, he was great. He was great to work with. We
Yeah,
had
I
a good time
think
on
that
that
the
one.
only reason I survived that is because George was our boss and he was making a much later schedule because call times were never terrible. I don't, that was the only way
Yeah.
that I survived because I was on that for 9 months and I didn't really ever have to come in that early. Because if it had been 6 a, I would have been dead after a couple weeks, especially then. Okay. In reverse,
Yes.
most miserable project you've ever worked on, and you don't have to answer this if
Mm.
you don't want to offend anybody,
Yeah.
but
No. Yeah.
anything come to mind, like that was just like the worst?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There, yeah, I'm trying to think. Uh, there was a television show I did called Hostages. That was
Yes,
pretty
yeah, I
miserable.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, the actors on that were very unhappy, and it was pretty tough. And the scripts didn't really make a lot of sense, and everyone was just kind of miserable on
Like,
that.
what the fuck are we doing here? Kind of like you talked about
Yeah,
before, and was just like, okay, interesting.
yeah, and but uh, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, I've been on some pretty miserable low budget movies.
Yeah, yeah,
That's for
yeah.
sure, man.
Yeah,
Oh my God, freezing and
right.
not having any place to. But I don't know. Like the worst film you could be on is still an
Better th
amazing.
Yeah, than
Yeah, I
someone
mean,
paving roads at 6 a.m. or something. I got you.
yeah, and it's all going to be over soon, and you're going to
Right.
have some great stories to tell about how
Yeah.
horrible this director is or how miserable this actress was.
Okay, so of all the projects you've been on, there's been a lot. I think we talked about there's 121 things you just acted in. Again, we sort of touched. What's the most proud thing that again you've ever been on, where even whether it was a large or small role? And I think you already kind of addressed it with the Argo and the Good Night and Good Luck, because obviously those were up for Oscars. But would you say would what would you say what the answer to that is?
Well, Argo was, yeah. I mean, that was a fantastic experience and a great movie, and like very rarely do I do something that I personally would watch.
Yeah, right.
So I think the Holdovers that came out,
Mm.
last year, I think that's a movie I would have gone to the theater and watched. So I was very happy that I had a small role in that. Manchester by the Sea. I mean, anything written by Kenny is, you know, I do craft service for.
I gotta say that I loved that one. I think I saw
Yeah.
that a little bit later. It's very emotional.
Oh my God.
I was actually
Yeah.
quite into that. I thought everybody was great.
Yeah.
Um,
As a
okay,
dad, now, that's an intense
yes,
story.
yeah. I don't even like to think about that story.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, here's an interesting one. Since you've been in the business so long, right? And me just even being production for 9 months, it was ruining the. I mean, I wasn't even the set PA, but coming in and seeing you guys do the scenes 40 times, does this ruin the magic of being able to watch anything? Can you still go and watch, like when you were a kid and you were watching those movies or the TV shows? Can you still sit down and enjoy them? Or are you always thinking about, oh, fuck this scene? There's the set. Like, can you ever just still enjoy yourself
Oh yeah,
movie?
totally, totally,
Okay.
100%. Yeah, yeah, I totally get caught up in. Matter of fact, I even sort of appreciate it more sometimes. Where I'm like, holy shit, how did that actor give that performance? Under those circumstances, like, oh, that's insane to me.
Okay, that's
Uh,
cool. That's
yeah,
that you're not
yeah,
jaded that you like because even Marnie has said with her being on set so much, she always thinks about that when she's watching stuff. So,
yeah. I mean, sometimes I do, but
right.
yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, going back, I told you we are going to come back to this. What do you get recognized the most for? Is it Jimmy Cooper or is it other things on that list of all the entirety of the career?
Yeah, well, it depends on where I am and what the person does for a living. Like, if it's a lawyer and a woman in her 40s and upwards, it's definitely damages.
Okay.
If I'm in Italy, it's definitely, or if you're Brazilian, it's definitely the OC. They're
Mm,
obsessed with soap operas, and Friends, of course, is huge.
interesting. Right. We
Yeah,
didn't even cover.
Joshua is
Yes.
very, very big. In England too. Like, I don't know if you know this, but Friends is like, they're like the Beatles in England. I
Wow.
mean, that show is like, they're insane about that
Yeah,
show.
because
Yeah.
they've rewatched the season so many times, and then the season that you're on, they're like, "Oh, right, you were in that, right?" Yeah,
I had a really funny story. I was doing a play with Judy Dench, right?
yeah,
Dame Judy
yes,
Dench. It was
yes.
a very highfalutin. English, written by David Hare, and directed by this guy who had just been knighted. And it's just the high end of British theater. And I've got this great role in it. And the director, his name is Richard Eyre. He's been knighted. He's like, I'd very much like to go out to dinner with you, Tate. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, this guy wants to go out to, he ran the National Theater for like decades. So I can't believe it. So I'm like, I'm going to have like the greatest conversation with him about theater and about Shakespeare and Moliere or whatever. And he sits me down, we sit down, and he's like, so what was it like to be on the Friends set? I mean, he was obsessed. Is Joey, who do you consider the funnier, Joey or Chandler? I mean, I find all he wanted to know was about fucking Friends. I was like, are you shitting me? Like,
Yeah, you thought it would be all these,
yeah.
highbrow
He was
things.
obsessed.
And
Yeah.
wow, that's hilarious.
All he did was talk about Friends.
Okay, so final question, then we're going to go to some fan comments here. If you go back and you break down all the facets of the business that you've been a part of, from directing to acting in film to acting in TV to theater to voiceover work in movies and in commercials, what's your favorite? And I know I guess from what you've said so far, you're going to say theater.
I guess being in a play that's a big hit and just works every night is the most fun. Yeah. It's
Okay.
definitely the most fun. There's a great sense of community on Broadway, and yeah, it's just fucking great.
Got it. That's so funny because that's, I think, what Sean says a lot on Smartlist, and I'm always, to me, like if I was in, it would be a movie or whatever. But that's interesting that it's so that theater is well loved in the actor community.
Yeah, totally.
So, okay, really quick before and I know we've been going kind of long here. I appreciate all the time you've given. This has been fantastic. I promise
Anything for the Wally Report, bro.
yeah, I
Anything
mean,
for the Wally
this
Report.
has been great. We've learned a lot. I want to do a couple of the user comments. Okay, so really quickly, um, let's go to comments from the first episode. So this is actually really funny because of the length of this episode right now. So Sandre B. Sandra, we used to work with him, a Norwegian guy. You would love this guy. He's fantastic. He was one of the product managers back in Bang& Olufsen. He's a big fan of the show. His comment that he left was bit too long, like which we're now outdoing.
Yeah.
Like the first seasons of Breaking Bad, which I don't get at all because I don't even understand your comment there, Sandra. The Breaking Bad's the greatest show of all time, and the episodes are perfect. And he says otherwise 10 out of 10. So I like this. Excuse me. Then the other one we got to bring up because this is the classic Graham. Let's just do the classic Graham really quickly. He chimes in. He puts his comment on the wrong episode because he's clearly talking about episode 3. And this is on the comments of episode 1. Graham says, episode was phenomenal. Thank you, Graham. Can't wait to barge down more doors for the 3rd to complete the epic trilogy. So anyway, Graham, I'm calling you out, but also shaming you here live. And then he goes, "What are you guys? What are your thoughts on Planets of the Apes series?" I actually haven't seen them. I'm not a Planet of the Apes guys. Have you seen the Planet of the Apes movies, Tate? Are you a fan of
I
them at
have
all?
seen one. I auditioned for the last one,
Yeah.
and I did not get it. And let me tell you, it was the hardest audition I've ever had to do in my entire life.
Wow.
I have so much respect for those actors who do those roles. It is so difficult to act sort of like an ape, but not fully like an ape. And sort of, it's very stilted dialogue. You know, they don't use articles, and it's not conversational dialogue. It's kind of like halting ape dialogue. And
Shish.
I auditioned for it, and I had the hardest time. So my hat's off to anybody who can
To the
do,
ape people.
to the ape people.
So on the
The
last
SAG members.
episode, 3 other quick ones, and we'll get to my top 5. This is from John G, another major fan, original fan of the show. Great sode, he says. I'm going to check out the Jinx, which I can't believe he hasn't watched yet. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
really just season 1. It's the craziest true crime, doc ever. The story just will blow your mind. Then he says, he hadn't heard of Top Boy. And now I turned him on to that. He's actually watched the whole season. One of my faves of the year, he says. Love. So thank you, John, for the comments. If you haven't seen Top Boy yet, definitely watch it. Sandre, again, I'm giving him a double. So just because he commented on both, he says proposed rule for every lame Wally sports fact, Christopher gets to counter with a clean architectural fact. Right? I disagree because there's going to be too much sports and we don't need that all the architecture. But I thought since you're filling in here as the Christopher
Yeah.
character, that actually is pretty good. But I didn't bring up
I'm
sports
with him.
this time.
Yeah. I don't think it's just architecture. I think it's just culture in general, other than movies and television. He sort of rounds it out. He talks
Yeah.
about the history of Village Cigars, which is a great New York institution, and yeah, I think he rounds you out.
Yeah, it's
really
not, yeah,
nicely.
right? Because not everybody's a sport junkie. Last comment, and we'll go on to my top 5. This is from, and I'm gonna. I know it says Sean S, but it's really Stafford S, just like Dwayne. I'm not gonna say the new name. Okay. She says, great sewed, not a sports kook. So I definitely sub out some of those choices with genre shows that haven't got enough attention so far, specifically The Last of Us. And listen, I know everybody's saying it was a big miss on my part. I don't do end of the world shows, but I am going to put this on my list, even if it has zombies or whatever this other nonsense, and House of the Dragon, which might show up in a second. Okay, those are the comments here. Let's get into.
Can I add one thing before you do the top 5?
Totally, yes.
I watched a full series before this show to sort of like, and it's called Pachinko. Have you heard about it?
No, but I mean, yes, sorry, I've heard about it, but I have not watched it yet.
It's so good. It's on Apple TV, and I am giving it a shout out. It is amazing, and it has a history that I had no idea about between the Korean people and the Japanese people, and
from the wars, because I'm a war junkie. It started, yeah,
I think
even early dig it. In the interesting.
And it goes into the 80s, Wall Street in the 80s. So you're going to dig that because I know you're a big fan of Wolf of Wall Street.
Of course.
And it has this great combination of generational storytelling, and it's brilliantly acted.
Okay, well, we're actually going to come back because I did have time slotted for you to talk about your shows after my shows.
Oh,
so
shit,
no, that's
sorry.
fine. No, there's a chance to throw in Shogun if you want. We have. So one last thing I wanted to say is, looking at the comments, I'm disappointed that I didn't get viewers to give me their opinion on spoilers. So I still want you to chime in. It's a question that we're struggling with. When can we talk about spoilers? I think there almost needs to be a 5-year statute of limitation where you're not really allowed to talk about it, because there's tons of people that haven't seen just this last season. They're not like me that are constantly watching. So if we bring up a show and then we already spoil it, it's going to kill a lot of people. Some people believe.
No, I totally disagree with you.
Okay, so what are you saying?
100%.
After the season's done, you can talk about it live?
I think spoilers is BS, because what draws people to shows are the characters, the actors, the interactions, and if you find out, who shot JR or whatever, it's not going to affect your whole viewing experience. It's not. You're still going to get caught up in a show whether you know the ending or not.
You're probably right, but for someone like me, if I know anything, my life's over. I won't even watch a preview now, which is really, Christina gets very annoyed in the household. If a preview goes too long, even that's getting shut off. Anything to disrupt the beautiful narrative that unfolds throughout your watching, if that's jeopardized, I'm livid. But maybe you're right though. I mean, I like your take on it. Okay, one other housekeeping item. David F, another big fan of the show, was confused on why Beckham could be on my list if it was a sports doc. Anything episodic counts. So I just wanted to be clear with it. If it's a docu-series, if it's a documentary that's broken up in parts and episodes, if there's something episodic, it counts as long as it's a series. It's just not film. Okay? So I just wanted to make that clear with everybody. All right. Top 5 shows of June. There's been a lot of releases in June. I'm unhappy with some of these, just like last month, but I'm going to rattle them off. At number 5, House of the Dragon Season 2, HBO Max. Now, it's 91% on Rotten Tomatoes critic, 90% on the audience. This is something new that I'm unveiling. There is now something called a Wally Report score, because I keep just telling you the tomatoes, but hey, you've come to the report for a reason. I have my own criteria and my own ranking system. This is only a lowly 65% on the Wally Report. I actually dislike the show. I am too much of a Thrones guy. It's basically like they've taken, of course, besides the finale, one of the greatest shows in history, and they've followed it up in my eyes. And I don't want to be too negative on the show. It's a bit dismal. It just, I just can't get into it. The only reason that it's number 5 on the list is because I love Thrones so much that they're talking about certain Thrones themes. And overall, the acting is pretty good and the writing's pretty decent, but mostly I'm angry the whole time. Okay. And this new season has come out. And the other reason that it's on here is because there just, again, still to me has been a big gap in major show quality. So I've been getting into arguments. A lot of people need to think that it needs to be highly ranked. I just don't get it yet. I don't know totally why I'm watching it. I'm not. I mean, I could go on and on. I know this isn't something you watch anyway, Tate, even though now going back, knowing what you liked when you were 4, Thrones would have been a huge hit for you. But now
Yeah,
you're not
maybe.
really a
No,
medieval guy, right? Like, you're not
no.
searching Knights of the Round Table stuff as much as you thought you would later in life, right?
Maybe Monty Python and the
Right.
Holy Grail, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so overall, listen, it's if you still want to be in the Thrones universe, there's a lot of great things about it. There's some really good actors. The cinematography is pretty great. Let's just move on though, because I don't have much positive to say about it. And it's HBO Max for people that really care about this. Number 4, The Acolyte, Disney Plus. It's the new Star Wars show. 84% critics' choice, or the critics' ranking on Rotten Tomatoes. 14% audience score, which is the lowest I've almost ever seen. And it's got to be angry Star Wars people. I'm actually one of them. I don't even really like this show. I'm giving it a 67% on the Wally ranking score. But it's Star Wars. So just like because it's Thrones, I have to have it on my list because I'm Star Wars all the way. Now, I was reluctantly dragged in to add this show to the list. Again, it's because there isn't that many other great shows. I was almost ready to fully write this off. And then the last episode and a half, they got me. There's a new bad guy. He's compelling. I like the actor. The fighting was really impressive. So if you are a Star Wars diehard like me and you don't miss any of the Star Wars shows, add it to a summer list, but I'm not over the moon about it. I know you don't keep up on the Star Wars stuff, Tate, so I'm not even really going to bring you in on this.
But when I do, I'm kind of like you. There is no such thing as a bad Star Wars thing for me.
Right.
I'm like, people are like, oh yeah, this is so much better than that one. And
Right.
I'm like, it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars. It's amazing. I love it.
You at least watch some of The Mandalorian, right?
I watched some of The Mandalorian, but I don't get Disney Plus. Isn't that terrible?
Yeah, you got it. It's one of those ones you got to have.
The voice of Hercules.
You got to have it. Yeah. Remember we talked about the streaming. Yeah, it's one of the ones you have to have. So anyway, here's the thing. House of the Dragon, we're only 3 episodes in. It could get better. Acolyte, we're only 5 episodes in. So what's cool is that this is going to kind of segue into July. We're going to see these shows persisting into next month. Okay. Number 3, show of the month. This was on my preview list last month. The Boys Season 4, Prime Video. 93% critic, 53% audience, which is blowing my mind that I feel like the audience is starting to disagree with Rotten Tomato a lot. The Wally Report score, which is the only thing that matters here, 70%. So we've gone up, right? 70%. It's the worst season so far, but It's The Boys. And if you haven't watched it, The Boys is amazing. Anthony Starr and Carl Urban are fantastic actors. They make the show. I don't know if you've ever watched The Boys tape, but it's basically a satire on superheroes. It's very
Hmm.
gore. The one thing that I don't love about it is it's so gory, almost to the point of, am I watching a horror movie? What is happening? And it's like the showrunner or the creator is definitely demented. He's brilliant, but I think, and I don't know who, I think he has some serious issues because he always wants to put in really graphic, like just shocking stuff that I could live without. But this usually the writing, the acting, the storyline is actually amazing. It's been one of the better shows on TV for the past couple years. There's only 4 episodes that have been launched. I'm 3 in. I'm liking it, but I'm not loving it. So I'm giving it a number 3. It could still move up. There's just less things that are emotionally gripping me. I can't do giveaways because we already talked about that. No spoilers on the show. But those 2 are just so amazing. I don't know if you know either of these guys, but they're like, one of them plays sort of the Superman character, and he's out of his mind. He's unbelievable. Okay, number 2 show. This is where Corey S. also agrees. Presumed Innocent. It's a remake from the Harrison Ford movie that I'm going to rewatch
Hmm.
later, but I don't want any giveaways. This kind of came out of nowhere, and it's Apple TV Plus. It has 75% critic score, 82% audience, 74 on the Wally Report score. Okay, it was a little bit higher.
Tough, man. It's tough.
Well, listen, I want Breaking Bad all the time. Okay, now it was higher. The first 2 episodes, I'm telling you, are unbelievable. It was one of the best first 2 sods as far as just like everything, the filmmaking, the acting, the way that the scenes were shot. It was you were getting sucked in. The Jake Gyllenhaal, Peter Sarsgaard, Bill Camp, unbelievable. There's a couple
Yeah.
throwaway roles. It's the last couple episodes have gone downhill, which is why it used to be an 80%. It's gone down a little bit. If you're 75% and up, it's considered classified hot on the Wally Report. So since it's only 70%, 74%, it's been lowered, sadly. It doesn't have that, but it's still my number 2 show. I have high hopes. Only 4 episodes have been out. I'm hoping for more. I'm hoping to regain an amazing glory. Okay, but it's definitely one of the surprises of the season, and Corey agrees. And now, of course, we've come to the number 1 show. Corey's not going to be happy about this. And I'm glad that we did this show later in the month because, as everybody knows, The Bear season 3 has launched and it is instantly in the top spot. The first episode, phenomenal, 94% critic choice on Rotten Tomatoes, but only 59% audience, which I'm actually shocked by. So there's a lot of other people that maybe don't love this new season. I'm giving it an 80%. So it's classified hot. I'm only 3 episodes in. For people that know, all the episodes have been launched kind of like, you remember you were talking about the whole Netflix thing? Hulu did this maybe to kind of count. Usually I'm kind of almost bummed because normally they do 3 and then 1 and make you wait for a little bit. All of the episodes are out. I'm taking my time because I don't want to just binge it. So I've just watched 3 and it's not as great as the last season, but I love it. For episode 1, cinematography wise is amazing. The showrunner, the creator is a genius. Jeremy Allen White, the main actor, and Eben Moss are both fantastic. The only negative thing is I don't like the short episodes. It's the only drama on TV that gives you 30-minute episodes. It's like, that's a comedy length. It's pissing me off a little bit. We don't want less Bear. We want more Bear. Okay? It's that good. I don't know. Have you gotten into the Bear at all? I haven't really been letting you chime in much here because I know you don't have a ton to say about these titles. You haven't watched any of the Bear with Corey?
I haven't. I'm so sorry.
All right.
It's
I mean, that's
terrible.
fine.
I
That's
know,
fine.
but
You
yeah,
gave us
but
so much
Corey,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
Corey is not. Yeah, she's not into it. I know that she's not. She actually showed me a scene, and she's like, "This show takes itself so seriously."
Yeah.
Like it doesn't. Yeah.
It's the
Anyway,
greatest. It's the number 1 now.
some great actors on it. I know Evan.
Evan?
He's. I've
Yeah.
worked with him.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, he's
he's great.
unbelievable.
Yeah, he's
Here's
so
what
good.
I'd say about it, and I want to go back to Corey's comment because it got shortchanged a little bit because I was trying to avoid the spoilers. Corey commented about the Christmas episode, which she didn't actually love. And if people, you as an act appreciating great filmmaking and acting, this episode, I agree with, there's a little bit over the top. There was a lot of, she commented that there's a lot of um uh people coming in, big actors come cameos. So
Uh-huh.
so uh I'm forgetting who the heck came in. You know, the guy who does Better Call Saul. Why am I forgetting his name right now?
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking
He
about.
comes in and he's unbelievable. And John Mulaney, the comic, comes in. A bunch of different. So she was complaining about the Jamie Lee Curtis. Thank you. Um, they all come in for this episode, but to me, it was where the show shifted from good to great. And you would like it because it's almost like it was like a Donovan dinner. Everybody's yelling at each other. There's happiness. There's obviously we didn't have the level of drinking that they're having because we're not a kind of a non-drinking, but everybody's screaming at each other. I felt like I was home and it was like the early 90s and we were in Jersey and people were yelling over each other and pass the meatballs and this kind of thing. And it is so unbelievable. So I'm disagreeing again with Corey live on the Wally Report. That episode changes the whole show. It's yes, it's a little bit over the top. Um Anyway, so it's number one show in the world again. Let's see if it lasts. Now, I do want to give a quick yearly count. HBO Max has 3 top 5 shows. Apple TV Plus has 3. Netflix has 1. FX on Hulu has 1. Prime has 1. So I'm counting that along to really see, to answer Luke's question on what's the best streaming service, right? Now, if we look at July for the next episode, um, we're going to have the continuation of these top 5 shows. And so we're going to see, will they maintain the spots? That's the big action that we're going to get, right? Cobra Kai season 6 comes out July 18th for the Cobra Kai people. Last season really went downhill for me, but I'm still in my heart. I'm a big Cobra Kai guy. And then Only Murders in the Building season 4. I don't know if you've ever watched that, but with Martin Short and Steve Martin, it's just
I
it's
love Martin Short.
they're
Yeah,
just both
amazing
so
guy.
great in it. Some of it's a little silly. I love the show. Last season, not as much, but it's great. That'll be August 27th. So come back next month. We're going to have another amazing special guest. Here's now without Christopher, I'm going to have to do his outro just briefly. So here we go. Thank you for listening to the Wally Report, the world's hottest podcast. Please subscribe, follow, comment, like, share, and blast. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, and we're on YouTube, and we're plowing heavy on the gram at the Wally Report. That's at the Wally Report. We've actually been posting about new hot shows on the page, so definitely don't miss out. You can also, I don't know who the hell's still emailing, right? So, but you can also email us directly at info@wally.report. That's info@wally.report. I think it's more just funny saying these. The .com is out. That's out, baby. Please help spread the word. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. So let me pull up the music here, Tate, before we jam out. Any final thoughts from you? Thank you so much for coming on the report.
Oh, I loved it, man. It's great. It's great to be part of.
Let me get our media up here and our final jingle that everybody loves.